Story 1. After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party backfired, landing her in jail and a divorce. For the last 7 years, I, 29F, have been wed to Harry, except for his relationship with his sister, Kayla, who brings all the negativity into our life. I enjoy everything about our marriage. Now, don't get me wrong, when I initially met Kayla, I loved her, but with time, I rapidly changed my view. She is poisonous, manipulative, and really negative. Knowing the kind of person she is, I have worked hard over the years to be on her good side. My husband dated Syl's best friend when he was 17 in the past, but they subsequently broke up since he felt under pressure to be with her because of Syl. His sister said he and another friend of hers should be together when he turned 23 and discovered he was single, but he disagreed. She went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to wed someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents hardly listened to her throughout their great battle. While my husband and I were meeting and falling in love, his parents were quite encouraging, but Syl always treated me coldly. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no apparent reason whenever I was present, reminding him of how well they were doing and suggesting how he could get in touch with them. This continued for some time. Harry also thought this strange and would ask her to stop bringing up his exes. I was not the only one who saw this. Then, Syl would get enraged and start mocking me, claiming I was jealous and Harry shouldn't be with someone like me. Syl would deliberately invite one of Harry's exes whenever his parents would call us for supper, saying she had inadvertently come across them that day and had to ask them politely. She doesn't follow me, but she checks my Instagram constantly as well since I have a public account. I observed she is usually the first person to see my stories. Should a man comment on my photograph, she would then go to her brother and grumble over how I was sharing indecent images of myself. Harry and I would actually chuckle at her claims. She persuaded Harry to split off with me when he and I agreed to live together, telling him I had many defects as a woman and that she could find someone far better than him. Since I had been just friendly to her all along, this comment really wounded me. Sadly, Syl's treatment of me got even worse as soon as Harry and I were engaged. Everyone started applauding Harry and me as we revealed our engagement, but I observed Kayla was somewhat quiet. Then, startled everyone, she sprang up from her chair and left our gathering. Later, she called Harry sobbing and yelling about how she didn't value receiving the news with everyone else, as she felt she was the closest to him and deserved to be the first one to know of his engagement. Later on, she messaged me, nearly borderline threateningly, advising me on how I should treat her brother as she had always been the only female in his life. I nearly shuddered over the strange message. I left her message on scene, which I know must have offended her even more, not even bothered responding. Every time Syl saw me, she started to progressively ignore me. She stayed involved in all the wedding preparations for whatever reason, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. Though both my future mother-in-law and fiancé called her out on it several times, her criticism of the wedding reached a whole new level as she freely expressed her unhappiness with my decisions. Her actions persisted. One day, Kayla overheard me talking about the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law. She started to make fun of me right away, stating how my decision had no class and how this was why she wanted her brother to wed someone better. For me, that was the tipping point and I lost control. I made it plain to her that she was no longer invited to our wedding and yelled at her that I could not stand her continual taunting and criticism anymore. Shocked and gasping in surprise, as if she had never expected me to challenge her, Kayla was infuriated, even by my mother-in-law who backed me. Later on, Kayla contacted Harry, moaning about how I embarrassed her and insisting he should control me since I would be his wife. Harry insisted strongly that he supported my choice and that she would not be invited to the wedding should she not atone. She grudgingly texted me a sincere apology. I saw it and once more left it on read. I was already tired from getting ready for my wedding, and I wanted nothing to do with her drama. She did visit our wedding in the end, since I wanted her to not criticize us afterward. Everyone, including the guests, seemed to have no issue following the pink tones and pastels chosen for my wedding. But Syl arrived looking as though she were attending a funeral, a black, floor-length gown with a veil. To put it mildly, we were stunned. Syl visited everyone. sharing her grief at losing her brother to another woman. My husband approached Sil about her discomfort with her wedding attire at the reception, saying that she had the right to wear whatever she chose and that I was too domineering. She sought to portray the victim. When her non-stop scene-making persisted, my mother-in-law and father-in-law ultimately ordered her to leave. It was embarrassing for me. Ever since that day, I avoid her. I forbade Sil anywhere near our kid when I delivered my son, Nate. She tried to oppose it, but my husband's parents had my back. They supported my choice and knew exactly why I wanted Sil far from my infant. Sil suffered a miscarriage with her then-boyfriend, Jamie, 2 years ago, and it totally shattered her. For everyone, that was indeed a depressing period. Given our already childbearing status, Harry and I felt bad for her. We chose to be somewhat more lenient following her miscarriage. She could connect with our kid, Nate, so we would welcome her to our house despite her behavior with me. She has been rather lovely to our son. Really shocking. She looked to have changed at first, but with time, she returned to her former self. She constantly talks about how difficult her life is, how things never seem to go for her, and blames ex-friends or managers for upsetting her life. I have found over time that she is never wrong in her thinking. She is always attempting to get people on her side by playing the victim card and hardly acknowledges any flaws in confrontations. She chose to get married this year and invited everyone to save us. Given our relationship seemed to have improved, Harry was surprised to learn we were not invited. She began to explain how she won't let me come since I would cause disturbance to her wedding. When we questioned her about it, having never done anything to her, I phoned and asked her why she would think something like that. Kayla began to tell how she had deliberately dressed in all black for our wedding. So now she was worried that I might do the same, and this was why she wanted me off-site. I informed my spouse straightforwardly about how manipulative she was. Outraged about it, after discussing with his parents, Harry decided to let Sil know they would neither be attending the wedding nor would they pay for it. This turned Sil to tears, and she began to blame me for starting this disaster. Her husband told her she had no right to be pointing fingers at me, as she had freely admitted her own error. Kayla, however, explained her behavior by stating that I should just get over it since our wedding was long ago. Later, she contacted me to apologize and asked for forgiveness as Phil and Mill were still not paying for her wedding. Though I hate to say it, Kayla can be quite charming and convincing when she wants something. I wanted to just go forward from the past and forgave her. Her wedding to Jamie went perfectly. We all showed up and had fun. Not even 6 months later, Kayla appeared at our door grumbling about her marriage failing. For a few days, Harry and I let her stay with us, where she would spend endless hours venting about her husband. They appeared to be struggling to conceive, and Kayla was obviously blaming Jamie for everything. When I went to speak to Kayla, she insisted it was entirely her husband's responsibility. She would be hyper-focused on our lives and try to create things that didn't exist when she was not grumbling about her husband. For instance, usually every morning before heading to work, I visit the gym. When I'm running late, I occasionally grab my work clothes so I may finish my workout, have a bath, and change into my business wear. Sil observed this for some time and would have many questions about it, including why I was bathing or why I even needed to visit the gym. I didn't give it much thought and would tell her how I liked keeping my weight and how I disliked visiting the office all sweaty. She would nod and lick her lips. Mill was telling us about a friend of hers who was divorcing right at lunch. She left her friend's spouse and grabbed half of his assets after learning about his adultery. Sil stopped her abruptly to ask my husband whether he and I had signed a prenup before we were married. We paused to stare at her. We stopped eating. She glanced at my husband expectantly, as if I hadn't even arrived. My husband told her straightforwardly that he is not someone who minces his words, as he and I both made rather good money, and we felt no need for a prenup. Sil snorted and began to say that he could be blindsided any day and that cheats abound today. Her statements offended me, therefore I asked her to clarify exactly what she meant. Sil then began to remark how I was obviously meeting someone as I was usually carrying a change of clothing everywhere, and that as Harry's sister, it was her obligation to warn her brother. These were shocking remarks for me. Phil and Mill arrived right away to save her from continuing to fabricate such things and advised she shouldn't interfere with others' affairs. Without missing a beat, Sil continued to emphasize how she was only trying to be there for her brother and began to joke if our son Nate was indeed Harry's son, since he didn't quite look like him. I swear I watched the redness of wrath on my husband's face. In my life, I never had seen him this enraged. Looking Kayla squarely in the eye, he informed her that she was not a mother yet as she did not deserve to be one, and that her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla's lips hung in stunned disbelief. Mill and Phil simply watched silently as my husband left Kayla, complaining about her being a shameless person trying to ruin everything since her life had nothing to offer. She was merely a loser, he informed her, doing nothing all day while her husband worked non-stop. He kept saying that since she was plainly projecting, she should focus on her own marriage instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups. Reduced to tears, Kayla began to wail, expecting comfort. She turned to Jamie, seated just next to her, but he never spoke. My husband never has this kind of mental collapse. She eventually got up from her chair and dashed into the toilet. My husband was boiling over. I stroked his hand, and Mill arrived to cool him down, understanding just how annoying she could be. I nodded as he apologized for what his sister had said about our son. Having taken enough from Kayla over the years, I was somewhat relieved that my husband stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie but totally ignored Kayla. Once he cooled off that day following lunch, we returned to no interaction with Kayla. Her actions were impacting my husband in addition to me. We simply barred her from everything, so she could get in touch with us. After lunch, Mill and Phil spoke with us and decided Kayla had gone too far this time. They could see how their usually quiet son had gone wild after Kayla had persisted in pushing him. We last spoke with her a year ago, and everything has been running without problems. 2 months ago, I discovered what I was expecting. Given our lack of effort, this was quite unexpected. To welcome another family member makes my spouse and me blessed. We decided to let everyone know on my husband's birthday since we were waiting for the proper moment to do so. Wanting to honor Harry, Mill and Phil were throwing a great celebration in their lawn. Invited were our close friends and relatives. Sil chose to show her face after hearing about this from others. When we saw her, my husband and I staggered. Coming to hug Harry, Sil told him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was for their last talk. Taking my hand, my spouse advised his sister to be apologetic to me because she had pointed fingers at my character. Sil nodded, looked at me, then apologized. She informed me how she had been attending therapy for the previous few months and came to see how inappropriate it was for her to treat me like that. Though I disagreed with everything she said, I nodded as I wanted to be polite to her in front of everyone since this was a gathering for my husband. Mill and Phil checked in on us and informed us that should we feel uncomfortable, they would kick her out as they had no knowledge she would be arriving. Harry, however, insisted on not creating a scene, hence we decided to let this go. It seemed strange as Sil was laughing and socializing with everyone during the celebration. She mentioned visiting a therapist, so I wanted to provide her the benefit of the doubt, even though she appeared overly optimistic, completely not her nature. Harry spoke movingly about how he thought he was the luckiest man on earth, appreciative of yet another year spent with a lady like me. When it came time to cut the cake, his remarks made me flush with delight. As we were when we first started dating all those years ago, I couldn't help but value the fact that my husband and I were still intensely in love. Then, Harry and I made the decision to let everyone know some fantastic news. Grinning, we said we were having a baby, and everyone paused to consider before yelling in delight. My mother rushed up to hug me and started to cry as Phil saluted Harry and myself. Tears streamed down his face. Everyone was eager to know whether we had chosen baby names and was clearly delighted for us. Sil was the one sore thumb that stuck out. She seemed stunned. Her mood changed, and she simply turned away from us, appearing irritated. So I assumed maybe she was processing things slowly. Though I was a little concerned, thinking she would ruin yet another party for us, I was sidetracked with other individuals approaching to chat. I got up to assist my in-laws carry lunch, but Rick and my parents begged me to stay seated, telling me I should not even move at this point. Sil approached me, beaming as I was calmly waiting for my husband to bring me a meal, lively saying that she personally wanted to offer me dinner since she was so excited about my pregnancy. She handed me a dish. She even said as she passed me the plate about how she wanted to make it up to me for all the times she had been nasty to me in the past. I nodded and politely approved. She then turned to go. I was ready to start digging when I fortunately found she had put shrimp on my dish. I know I am quite allergic to shrimp, hence I was surprised Sil even brought me this. Disappointed, I shook my head and got up to get my own lunch. Jamie approached me at that point to wish well on my pregnancy. After a little conversation, he asked me why I hadn't been eating. Jamie reassured me not to worry and removed the dish from my hands. After I pointed out how Sil had served me shrimp, probably by error since he enjoyed eating shrimp, he told me he could have this dish. I could buy a fresh plate for myself. I nodded, grinned, then turned aside. Jamie began to puke and retch across this dish 5 minutes later. Not even 5. Concerned, everyone stopped eating and watched him stagger to get out of his seat. Concerned, Harry and Kayla hurried towards him. Jamie gestured at his plate, then at his throat. Our eyes grew wide with amazement as we realized what he had eaten definitely made something wrong with him evident. Jamie passed out. Then everyone gasped in amazement and worry. Kayla hurried over to examine his dish and her eyes grew shocked. She turned to stare at me and inquired whether I had handed her husband my plate. I nodded. Someone called for an ambulance amid the tumult, and he was hurried to the hospital. Through all of this, Kayla was sobbing nonstop and was staring angrily at me. Jamie had been poisoned, we were told later on. Knowing that the plate belonged originally to me, I nearly passed out upon hearing this. Jamie consumed what may have poisoned my baby and me. Not yet known to Harry, Mill, Phil, or my parents is this, since nobody knew what was in the food he consumed that had caused him to faint in this manner. The police were summoned to get evidence from it. Jamie is still in recovery in the hospital while I'm typing this. Kayla stayed with him overnight. Relatives calling to find out what happened to Jamie and who might have poisoned him have my husband and I fielding calls. What has transpired shakes Mill and Phil. They are sleeping over at our house since they are terrified to return back to their house. Nobody knows what happened abruptly while everything was going so nicely. To tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and how Kayla had come and presented it to me makes me terribly afraid. Should this evolve into an inquiry, I will have to tell the cops the truth. Though most importantly, I am now rather concerned about what Sil could do to me. I feel quite awful about what has transpired. I don't want to be around her, nor can I bring my kids anywhere close to her as she obviously has no restraints about trying to poison me. I feel bad about handing Jamie my meal and maybe contaminating my baby. Date 1. Whoa. Thanks for the thousands of comments on this post in just a few hours. I never would have guessed I could have received these many answers. I typed this earlier and had shaking hands. I haven't been able to sleep. Though what everyone says, I do feel somewhat accountable for the event involving my baby. I should have simply tossed the dish away. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I keep crying about his future. Knowing something is awry, my hubby has been hovering close to me. Though he doesn't know what I know about his sister, he believes I'm only worried. I agree with the remark saying I should get down and gently chat to everyone. Although I'm not sure if everyone will believe me, Mill and Phil do have security cameras set all around the house. Given that this birthday celebration took place in their backyard, I am confident they could check and confirm via their camera that Kayla presented me the plate. I'll speak with everyone tonight, then update. Update 2. We then chatted, and I am very happy to have the nicest in-laws on planet Earth. Mill and Phil are already staying over with us, so I sat down with Harry and them over dinner to let them know I had something crucial to share. I began by inhaling deeply, the weight of the circumstances slumping on my shoulders. Everyone gathered around. I related the birthday party's events, including how Sil had handed me a plate of prawns and Jamie had unintentionally consumed it, causing his sickness. Their shock and incredulity reflected my own as I spoke. Mill and Phil looked at each other, clearly worried. Harry's face transformed from uncertainty to rage. I went on, expressing my concern about Sill's intentions and past attempts to hurt me. Faced with the possible repercussions for myself and our unborn kid, I hesitated to share this material. Being the pragmatic woman Mill is, she advised right away, looking at the security camera tape. Given the gravity of the matter, Phil nodded in agreement, though clearly agitated. Harry stayed quiet to process the startling disclosure. Reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was indisputable. The video shows Sill presenting to me the poison plate and then what happened to cause Jamie's suffering. The weight of the data made no space for uncertainty. As the knowledge sank in, emotions ran strong. Now totally aware of his sister's evil intentions, Harry battled to control his wrath. Their daughter's activities horrified Mill and Phil, who also found the extent she had gone to cause disturbance shocking. Stunned in silence, we tried to figure out why she would act in such a manner. Given this is a very serious issue, my in-laws have opted to forward this material to the police. Following this disclosure, Jamie is the one who has to lodge charges on Sill. Hence, Phil and my husband will be visiting and meeting him after he recovers. I want to cry every time I consider how I let Jamie have my poison dish. I have no idea how Jamie will react. I am very anxious about him, so I cannot eat anything right or sleep. I will let you know about anything noteworthy. Update 3. Alright lads, I'm back with an update at last. Although I know it has been a month since my previous update, right now I'm a pregnant woman experiencing a lot. First things first, she was detained after seeing the proof. My in-laws handed the recording to the police. Kayla admitted everything right away and did not even dispute the claims. She started crying. Jamie was as startled as any of us when my husband approached him about what had transpired, telling him he would always be a part of our family, regardless of what he decided to do. My husband advised him to press charges against his sister since this was such a wicked thing to do. Once Jamie recovered, he not only chose to prosecute charges but also sought divorce. Emotional and begging them to pardon her, Kayla called Mill and Phil. As it happens, Kayla is pregnant herself. She tried to control them by telling them they should do this for the benefit of their granddaughter, begging them to bail her out. Phil strongly advised her, nevertheless, that she should at last learn to own her acts and that they were done coddling her. Though Mill is quite depressed about what is happening to her daughter, she knows that her actions cannot be simply forgiven. The cops discovered proof she had tampered with the meal meant to damage me, which backfired and resulted in injury to her husband. She has been charged with several offenses, including risking life, causing damage, and tampering with food, thereby compromising integrity. Saying how this was all my fault anyhow, Kayla had been pleading Jamie not to charge her. Fortunately, Jamie's mind is set on punishing her. Her court hearing will begin shortly. I doubt she can flee this time. My son and I are doing okay. To everyone inquiring in the meantime about what his aunt has done, he is clueless. We want our son to know and avoid these circumstances. Hence Harry and I have discussed, and we do intend to sit down with him and tell him the truth. Having a difficult but absolutely vital conversation with a young child will be challenging but essential. As instructed by my doctor, I also get frequent ultrasounds for my pregnancy every 2 weeks. We want the kid to be a surprise. Hence, we do not intend to find out her gender. Knowing what has happened to Kayla, my parents have been somewhat protective of me. They are urging me to see treatment since they are concerned this could compromise my psychological well-being during the pregnancy. I agree with them, as while behaving normally, I have a deep-rooted phobia of what Kayla did to my meals and avoid eating any outside food or anything I have not made myself. Hopefully, my husband will help me to overcome this illogical phobia as he knows about it and supports me all through. Date for: I last checked 8 months ago. Kayla is a prisoner right now. She came out guilty on the allegations. Though I never went to her court hearings, occasionally my in-laws would tell me how Kayla came clean to the court, admitting years of jealousy of me. She had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying my husband. Hence, when he started dating me, she would always try to harass me since she never wanted an outsider to marry her brother. She became jealous when we told my husband's birthday party we were expecting, as she was also going to reveal her pregnancy. She wanted to share her wonderful news since she had miscarried once, but she felt we stole her opportunity to shine. She became so enraged then from her pregnancy hormones. Mixed a little bit of rat poison with my supper. She said she wanted me to wind up in the hospital, but she never wanted to physically hurt the baby or myself. She said she deserved a reduced punishment as she never expected me to offer her husband my plate. And since I essentially poisoned her spouse, of course, the judge answered her pleadings. She was put to prison and will be far from our life for some considerable while. Jamie is also at last free since she has also effectively divorced him. We have seen him over the months and keep including him into our family events whenever we can. He informed me that it was never my fault when we spoke, and I profusely apologized to him for handing my plate to him. Hearing that, I had been rehearsing it over and over again in my thoughts, wishing I could have done things differently so he was never poisoned. I started to cry. That Jamie is doing well right now makes me happy. Regarding Harry and myself, our family now boasts a baby daughter. Our daughter's presence has warmed and lit our life, despite the shadows of the past still there. Being a big brother makes our son Nate very happy, and he has been loving and caring toward his little sister. Seeing our kids connect makes us appreciate things. My parents and in-laws have been there for us all through, guiding us through this new phase of our life. Now on to the next story. Story 2. When I was 17, my adoptive parents kicked me out for getting pregnant and refusing to keep my baby. 20 years later, their biological son reached out to me. I was just 4 years old when I lost my parents in a tragic car accident. I don't remember much about the crash itself, just that one moment I was in the back seat, and the next time I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital. Waking up to a world of nurses and doctors was terrifying for me as a child. I remember a CPS worker sitting beside me, explaining that my parents had died and I would need to stay with another family for a while. It was confusing and overwhelming. After that, I went through a series of foster homes, none of which ever felt like home. When I was 5, I was finally placed with Lorraine and James, who had been eager to have a child of their own. From the start, I felt their warmth and genuine care. They welcomed me into their home without hesitation. Filling the emptiness I had felt from losing my own family, it seemed like after all the tragedy, I had finally found a second family. However, as soon as I moved in, I noticed that James was very strict and disciplined, while Lorraine seemed to always follow his lead. I later learned that James's strictness was due to his background as an Army veteran who had been injured in action. His military experiences explained his obsession with meticulous planning and order. Understanding this didn't make it any easier when he would get angry over small things, like being a minute late for church. His strictness often left me feeling anxious and like I had to walk on eggshells around him. Lorraine, on the other hand, was more laid back but also drank a lot when James wasn't around. I watched her finish entire bottles of wine by herself, and she always seemed lost in her thoughts. She rarely asked about my school or homework, and aside from drinking, her main activities were cooking and cleaning, because James was very particular about that. At first, things were smooth, and I didn't witness many conflicts between them. But as I grew older, I began to see James's true nature. He was abusive. For James, my academic performance was everything. He constantly pressured me to improve, and if anyone outperformed me, he would get enraged. Even the slightest dip in my grades would result in him hitting me and calling me stupid. He frequently threatened to send me back to the orphanage if my marks didn't meet his expectations. As a child, I didn't realize this threat was empty, and it terrified me each time he mentioned it. I worked tirelessly to avoid being sent back. I also observed Lorraine and James having arguments, which would end with James dragging her into their bedroom. She would emerge with bruises on her hands and face. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, but it soon became clear that he was physically abusing her. To keep me from witnessing his violence, he would isolate Lorraine. I couldn't understand why Lorraine never called the police. After their fights, she would just sit and cry for hours while James would drink beer and watch TV. Realizing James's abusive nature made me fear being alone with him or doing anything that might upset him. But as anyone who has lived in an abusive environment knows, abusers will find any excuse to lash out. No matter how careful I was or how hard I tried to avoid provoking him, he always found a reason to be angry. Initially, it was all about my grades, but as I grew older, his focus shifted. It wasn't just about academics anymore. He criticized everything from the clothes I wore to the friends I chose, and even any romantic interests I had. He insisted I come straight home from school, claiming that spending time with friends was a distraction and that they would amount to nothing. According to him, I needed to keep my focus solely on my studies. Unbeknownst to James, Lorraine discreetly allowed me to spend an hour with my friends after school, knowing that James wouldn't return until later in the evening. She saw it as a small chance for me to enjoy some normality and social interaction beyond the tense atmosphere at home. These brief moments away from the constant pressure and scrutiny were precious to me, and I valued the time spent with my friends, even if it was short-lived. Lorraine's quiet act of kindness meant a great deal to me. However, things took a turn for the worse when James lost his job. The job loss seemed to heighten his frustration and anger, worsening the already abusive environment at home. With the added strain of financial instability, James became even more unpredictable and volatile, lashing out over the smallest things. I recall one night when Lorraine had just finished making dinner. As James sat down and glanced at the meal, he erupted into a furious rant about how it didn't meet his standards. He began yelling and slamming the table, berating her and threatening to throw her out if she couldn't cook properly. In his rage, he threw his plate against the wall, leaving Lorraine and me in a state of fear as we watched him. I could feel my whole body trembling. When I finally ate the food, I found nothing wrong with Lorraine's cooking. Over time, James's drinking worsened with his unemployment and idle days. Beer cans accumulated in the living room each morning, which Lorraine had to clean up. I also found myself unable to spend time with my friends, as James would harshly criticize me if I was even a minute late coming home from school. A classmate named Harry confessed his feelings for me and asked me out on a date. Despite my anxiety over James finding out, I was eager to experience a date and explore my feelings as a teenager. So, despite my worries, I agreed to go out with Harry. We met at a local coffee shop after school and spent the afternoon chatting and getting to know each other. That date turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life, as it marked the beginning of our love story. Harry was everything James was not, gentle and kind to everyone, including animals. He would bring me my favorite flowers whenever he could, saving up his pocket money to do so. Having never had a good role model, I didn't expect much, but Harry treated me with the care and respect I had always wanted. James was always a bit suspicious and would question me about whether I was spending time with any boys. I would deny it, silently hoping he wouldn't uncover the truth. Fortunately, not having a phone meant there were no incriminating texts he could discover. Harry and I took great care to keep our relationship private, even avoiding telling our friends to prevent any gossip. Harry understood my fear of James and was willing to keep our relationship a secret. When prom approached, Harry and I decided to attend with our group of friends to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. However, when James learned of my plans to go to prom, he outright forbade it. He dismissed it as a waste of time and refused to buy me a dress. I didn't really care about the dress. I just wanted to enjoy the evening with my friends. I begged him to let me go, reminding him of my good grades and how I had met his expectations. He scolded me, belittling my friendships and insisting that prom was insignificant. Lorraine disagreed and argued with James, believing there was no reason for me to stay home while my peers enjoyed themselves. James insisted that teenagers lacked a sense of right and wrong, and that he wouldn't allow me to go out simply to have fun when I could stay home and be safe. Despite my pleas and attempts to explain how important this event was to me, he remained resolute, dismissing my feelings as trivial. He even threatened to lock me out if I tried to sneak out for prom. On the night of the dance, I was the only one who stayed behind, spending the evening crying alone in my room. I was growing increasingly weary of living with James. After high school, it became even harder to see Harry since I wasn't allowed out and didn't have a phone. I asked James for a phone, but he insisted I didn't need one at my age. I argued that I'd be going to college and that everyone had a phone, but he said I'd have to buy one myself if I wanted it. That's when I decided to get a part-time job. Though the pay was modest, it allowed me to earn some money and gain a bit of independence. It also meant I could spend time with Harry without James finding out, using work as an excuse while I met up with him. Eventually, I received the incredible news that I had been accepted into an Ivy League university with a full scholarship. This was a significant accomplishment, as no one from my town had ever achieved it before. James took it upon himself to brag about my success to anyone who would listen, proclaiming how proud he was of me. Despite his constant boasting, he never actually congratulated me personally, instead acting as though my achievement was a reflection of his own success. After receiving my college acceptance, I felt an enormous sense of relief. At last, James had nothing to complain about, as I had fulfilled his greatest dream by securing a spot in a prestigious college with a scholarship. With my job and academic success, he couldn't label me as lazy anymore. His newfound satisfaction led him to agree to buy me a phone and allowed me to use the money I earned from work for college expenses. He even permitted me to hang out with my friends after work. For the first time, I felt like I could enjoy life a bit, just like everyone else. Harry and I knew we'd be separated when we went to college, but we promised to meet up whenever we could. Our intimacy was careful and limited, with both of us taking precautions. A couple of weeks later, I began experiencing unusual symptoms that resembled those of my period, but without actually having it. Being perceptive, I sensed something was wrong with my body, and I found myself craving food at odd hours. Panicking, I told Harry that I needed to take a pregnancy test, and he agreed. I took 3 tests, all of which came back positive. The shock was overwhelming, and I collapsed on the floor, crying uncontrollably. It felt like I was living through one of my worst nightmares. Harry tried to comfort me, but I was trembling with fear. I knew that if James discovered I was pregnant, especially right before college, he would react with unimaginable anger. Harry reassured me that the decision was entirely mine and that he would support me no matter what. He suggested talking to his parents first and then approaching James together to prevent any violent reactions, given my difficult home situation. Harry was genuinely concerned for my safety. His parents were incredibly understanding. His mother embraced me and comforted me, saying that such things happen to many people and not to worry too much. They agreed to come to my place to help break the news to James. When Lorraine and James were informed of the pregnancy, they were utterly shocked. Lorraine asked me twice if I was certain, and I confirmed with the results from multiple tests. James, however, erupted in anger, accusing me of being a product of his reluctance to adopt children from strangers, citing their unpredictable nature. He hurled a barrage of insults at me, claiming I had ruined my life. Harry's parents tried to calm James down, but he directed his fury at them, blaming them for the situation and appearing ready to physically confront Harry, who sat quietly in the corner, overcome with emotion. I started crying and told James that I wasn't planning to keep the baby, so he had nothing to worry about. I assured him that everything could return to normal and I would still go to college as planned. At that point, Lorraine asked to speak with James privately. They left the room while I sat there crying and anxiously fidgeting. Harry's parents looked at me with sympathy. When Lorraine and James returned, Lorraine's words struck me like a tidal wave. She proposed that we didn't necessarily have to give up the baby, suggesting that I could carry the pregnancy to term and then transfer my parental rights to them. I sat there in stunned silence as Lorraine stressed that the child was a gift from God and urged us not to consider other options. James supported Lorraine's view, suggesting that this arrangement would be ideal, especially since Lorraine was already pregnant herself. His words left me completely bewildered, and I struggled to grasp what he was proposing. James revealed that Lorraine had only recently discovered her pregnancy and had kept it private while processing the news with my own pregnancy. They now saw an opportunity to raise both children together as siblings. The shock of their suggestion left me speechless, grappling with the gravity of their proposal and the unexpected turn of events. Harry's parents were equally stunned and quickly expressed their disapproval. However, James interrupted, asserting that the decision was not theirs to make, and looked at me expectantly, waiting for my response. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I knew deep down that I couldn't agree to Lorraine and James's proposal. The idea of giving up my child to be raised in an environment reminiscent of my own troubled upbringing was unbearable. Although Lorraine had shown herself to be a caring mother in many ways, I couldn't ignore the fact that she couldn't shield herself from James's behavior, let alone ensure my child's safety. The thought of subjecting my unborn child to the same uncertainty and potential danger was unacceptable. While I cherished the thought of becoming a mother one day, I knew the timing and circumstances were far from ideal. I couldn't bring a child into the world under these conditions, knowing I couldn't guarantee their safety and well-being. I firmly told James that although I was glad to be gaining a sibling soon, I couldn't proceed with the pregnancy. I was neither mentally nor physically strong enough to handle it. The idea of watching my child grow up with Lorraine and James while pretending they were just a sibling was inconceivable. Living a lie and denying my child the truth about their parentage was something I simply couldn't endure. When I shared my decision, Lorraine broke down in tears, expressing her disappointment that I couldn't do this for her despite all the sacrifices she had made for me. James, visibly enraged, got up and began pacing the room. I tried to explain my stance, but they refused to understand. Harry's mother stepped in, supporting my choice and offering to arrange an appointment with a gynecologist to move forward with the procedure. Lorraine's crying intensified, and James started shouting, asking if I was satisfied now that I was causing her so much pain. He then demanded that I pack my things and leave the house. My shock was palpable as James declared he was fed up with me, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish for not giving them my child. Harry's parents gently urged me to pack up quickly, clearly troubled by James's volatile behavior. I hurried upstairs to gather my important documents, photo albums, and as many clothes as I could. When I came back downstairs, James warned me to take whatever I could carry because he planned to throw out and burn the rest of my belongings the next day. I tried to speak with Lorraine, but she wouldn't even look at me. As I left, James told me I should never come back. I was bewildered and heartbroken, unable to understand what I had done to warrant such ruthless rejection. Harry and his parents generously offered me a place to stay, and I returned to their home. The following days were a blur as they took me to the gynecologist where we scheduled the necessary procedure. It was a difficult decision for both me and Harry, but given the circumstances, we knew it was the best choice for our future. After the procedure, I spent a few days recovering with Harry by my side, offering unwavering support. He and his parents were incredibly kind and did everything they could to help me through this challenging time. Throughout this ordeal, James and Lorraine never reached out to me. When the day came for me to move into college, I texted James, hoping he might have forgiven me by then. Instead, he responded with harsh words, calling me a failure and a disappointment and accusing me of turning into a prostitute. He said he didn't want his biological child to end up like me. His cruel message cut me deeply, and I cried for hours. They had been the only parents I knew, and now, with their own children on the way, they had severed ties with me. My college years were challenging but ultimately rewarding. I juggled a part-time job with my studies, working hard to maintain my grades. It was tough, but I was determined to succeed. Fortunately, Harry kept his promise and supported me throughout. He would visit me at college whenever he could, and his constant encouragement helped me through the rough patches. During holidays, his parents often invited me to spend time with them, and they began to feel like family to me. I graduated with honors, achieving the distinction of cum laude, and Harry and his parents were there to celebrate my graduation. I secured a good job in my field, and it was a proud moment, knowing all my hard work had paid off. Harry and I eventually moved in together, and our relationship grew stronger with time. We supported each other through life's ups and downs, and after several years, we decided to get married. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration of our love and commitment, surrounded by our closest friends and family. I didn't even consider inviting James and Lorraine to the wedding. As a married couple, Harry and I have continued to build our life together. Recently, we took a significant step by buying a new house and renting out our old one. Our new home has become a cozy haven where we create new memories and plan for the future. We bought the new place to be closer to Harry's aging parents, who have become like family to me as well. I want to be there for them in any way I can. It's been almost 20 years since James and Lorraine kicked me out, and I barely remember them now. Over the years, I haven't dwelled on them much, though I do recall spending my first year of college grieving their absence. By my second year, I resolved to forge a new life for myself, free from their rejection. It was painful, and building this life on my own took immense strength. They've never reached out to me, and I haven't felt the need to check in on them either. Throughout these years, Harry has been my steadfast companion and partner in every sense. Although we never had children, our two beloved dogs have brought us immense joy. We visit Harry's parents every other weekend and frequently enjoy trips and discovering new restaurants together. Looking back, I feel that my life has turned out well, and I wish I could embrace my 17-year-old self and reassure her about her future. Recently, I received a friend request on Facebook from someone named Matt, with a surname that seemed familiar. When I checked his profile, I was taken aback by how much he resembled James. I accepted his request, and he sent me a greeting. I replied, and he soon asked if I knew anyone named James and Lorraine. My heart raced as I realized he was their son. Nervous yet determined to be honest, I confirmed that I knew them since they had adopted me when I was 5. Matt expressed a strong desire to talk if I was comfortable, so I agreed and gave him my number. When he called, the conversation started off awkwardly, but Matt soon shared that he had always known about a child his parents had before him because he had seen my pictures in the family photo album. Whenever he asked about it, his parents would dodge the question. He had been searching for me for a long time, having learned my name from our hometown, and he had recently stumbled upon my profile by chance. His sole reason for reaching out was to uncover the truth. As I recounted the painful events of my past, including how his parents had asked me to give up my child and then expelled me when I refused, I could feel the weight of the emotions. I described their absence from my life over the years and how I had managed to cope thanks to the support of my husband's parents. The conversation was emotionally charged, and I revealed long-buried feelings. Matt's voice conveyed shock and disbelief as he absorbed my account. After a period of silence, he told me he had no idea his parents had treated me so cruelly. He had always believed their story that I had left on my own accord. He thanked me sincerely for my honesty and apologized on behalf of his parents, expressing regret for the pain they had caused me. Since our conversation, I felt grateful for Matt's effort to reach out and his understanding, which has brought me some comfort and validation. However, I worry about how James and Lorraine will react when they learn that I've shared the truth with Matt. Did I make the right choice in revealing everything, or would it have been better to keep silent? Update 1. I wanted to share that my initial concerns were valid. Within just 24 hours of Matt reaching out to me, Lorraine and James began bombarding me with calls and texts. Since I've kept the same number all these years, it was relatively easy for them to find me. Their messages have been filled with anger and accusations, mostly centered around why I disclosed family secrets to Matt. James's message, in particular, was harsh, insisting I should have kept quiet as I had for years and not interfered between him and his son. Overwhelmed and unsure of how to handle the situation, I've been dodging their calls and messages, uncertain of the best way to address this unexpected confrontation. Update 2. I informed Harry about the situation. He was unaware of Matt's outreach, and upon learning that I had shared our past, he felt I shouldn't have done so. His concern wasn't about the truth being wrong, but rather that James was clearly unstable and that this revelation would only stir up unnecessary drama in our lives. I also spoke with Matt, who told me he confronted James and Lorraine after our discussion. They attempted to deny everything, labeling me as a liar and accusing me of using them until I could escape to college. Despite their claims, Matt didn't believe them and told them to stay away from his family. He also informed them he would be cutting them off financially. Matt revealed that he and his wife had recently adopted twins, but James and Lorraine had refused to visit them, which had made Matt question their behavior. After learning about my past, Matt understood why they might have been unhappy with his adoption. He assured me he would ask them to leave us alone and extended an invitation for me to visit his twins whenever I could. He expressed a desire to get to know me better, given our sibling connection. I'm touched by his kindness and might take him up on his offer to visit his family with Harry. Update 3. It's been 7 months since my last update, and for those asking, here's what's new. I decided to block James and Lorraine from all communication channels, which has stopped their threatening messages. Matt intervened and spoke to them, so they had no choice but to back off. Harry and I have visited Matt and his wife at least 4 times over the past few months. Each visit has been warm and welcoming, and we've spent hours reconnecting, sharing stories, and bonding over our childhoods. I've also had the joy of spending time with Matt's twins, who were delightful. I'm deeply grateful that Matt reached out, and the connection with him and his family has been a source of healing and joy for me. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife and I were enjoying a date when her mother burst into the restaurant, shouting, "Why didn't you invite me?" My wife instantly apologized and pulled out a spare chair. Holding back my anger, I got up and declared, "You two have fun. I'm done with this marriage." The entire place went silent. Before we dive in, leave a comment below mentioning where you're reading from. Enjoy the story. I'm a 38-year-old man who was married to a 34-year-old woman. Let's call her Eli for 6 years. We met through mutual acquaintances and got married after 2 years of dating. In the beginning, everything felt comfortable. She was thoughtful, funny, affectionate. She seemed to listen. At least that was how it appeared. We hardly ever argued at first, except when it involved her mother, Helen. Let me be upfront. I truly tried. Everyone says that, but I really did. Never had I clashed with anyone's parents before. I'm not the confrontational type. I mostly keep to myself. I'm the sort who bakes desserts on special occasions, remembers birthdays, and tries to be considerate. But from our very first meeting, Helen gave me the cold shoulder like she'd already decided I wasn't good enough for her daughter. You know, the kind of person who sizes you up in 5 seconds and never revises that judgment. The first time Eli introduced me, Helen barely smiled. She just eyed me up and down and remarked, "You're taller than I expected." I assumed it was nerves or something similar and let out a polite laugh. It only deteriorated from there. Helen would drop lines like, "Oh, you don't wear any fragrance? Bold choice." Or, "That's a shirt you're going with." Or, "So, you didn't follow my recipe, I see." She would swing by our home without warning. On one Sunday morning, she used the spare key Eli had given her and let herself in. I was wearing a bathrobe. Helen looked me right in the eye and said, "I used to wear things like that too. Back before I was married." I begged Eli to establish boundaries. She'd respond, "My mom means well. She's just old school, doing her best." No, Helen was aiming to control everything. Eli either didn't notice or didn't mind. Over time, I realized how much authority Helen wielded over her. Eli refused to finalize anything major without Mom's input. If we planned a trip, she'd call Helen to ensure it wouldn't clash with Helen's schedule. I couldn't even pick out a new sofa without Helen's critique. She found fault with everything I did. How I folded towels, how I cooked eggs, and Eli never told her to stop. She just smiled vaguely and let me take the heat. Last month, Eli came home saying she had a surprise. Reservations at Lucas Trattoria, the same spot where we'd celebrated our first wedding anniversary. She said we needed some time to reconnect. We had been tense lately, so I got excited. Maybe she'd finally recognized the problems and wanted to put us first. I got dressed up, put on the black shirt she once loved, styled my hair carefully. We arrived at the restaurant, dimly lit, cozy, full of couples talking softly. It seemed perfect. We ordered drinks and had a laugh about something trivial. One of her coworkers who got the wrong Zoom link. The server brought fresh bread. Then it happened. We were in the middle of a conversation when a sharp voice cut across the room. "Why didn't you invite me?" Pierced the air, making everyone turn to stare. I lifted my head and there stood Helen. She wore a flashy blouse, heavy makeup, and carried an oversized bag. She'd halted in the middle of Lucas, glaring at us like we'd committed a crime. Eli froze. "Mom!" Helen approached. "You told me you were staying in tonight. You never mentioned coming here. I told you I wanted to check this place out." I was speechless. My heart pounded. Helen shot me a look and added, "You two really thought I wouldn't want to come along? How selfish." Then Eli did something that stunned me. She looked at her mother, then at me, and pulled out the vacant chair beside us. "Have a seat, Mom. It's fine." I stared, hoping it was some kind of joke. But it wasn't. She called the waiter for another place setting. That was it. I stood outwardly calm, but boiling inside, and said in a strange voice, "Enjoy yourselves. I'm finished with this marriage." Then I walked out. The entire restaurant went silent. Not just a few glances, but absolute hush. I didn't look at Eli or Helen. I went straight for the exit and kept walking until I reached the corner. I pulled out my phone, got a ride, and stayed at a friend's place. I didn't return that night or the next. When I finally came back, Eli seemed stunned, as if I were the one overreacting. She said, "You embarrassed me." I answered, "You took her side." She claimed she only gave in so there wouldn't be a bigger scene. That Helen would have caused more drama if told to leave, and she didn't see another option. I said, "You could have stuck up for me like a wife, a partner, someone who cares." She had no answer. I'm not the kind of person who blows up without reason. But that fiasco didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was years of feeling belittled, sidelined, forced to swallow it all with a smile. So, I began calmly planning my departure. No shouting, no tears. I just withdrew, stopped communicating. I separated our finances, changed passwords, got an attorney. I collected documents, snapped photos of the items I had paid for, changed where my paycheck was deposited, rented a P.O. box, and found a small apartment. I was leaving. And Eli, she pretended everything was normal, like that disastrous dinner was just a blip. I stopped sleeping in our bedroom, stopped cooking, and she hardly seemed to notice. Or maybe she did and simply didn't mind. Helen, however, had no idea what was coming. After that night at Lucas, I kept my distance. I needed time and space. Eli acted as if nothing was different. The day I briefly came back, I found her casually playing video games on the couch like any other weekend. She looked over and said, "You feeling better?" I stayed silent. She went on, "You know how my mom is. Easier to just let her join us than fight her." I stared, wondering if she heard what she was saying. I gave no response, just walked past. From then on, I wouldn't pretend anymore. No more conversations about it. No more requests to set boundaries. I'd done all that. This time I wasn't asking, I was acting. I copied every bank statement, every receipt, every email and text. Since I handled most of our bills, it actually helped my case. We had a joint savings, sure, but the rent came from my account and our credit cards were under my name. Plus, I was the one who had covered most of the down payment on our apartment. Then I uncovered something else. Eli had been sending Helen money. Started small, 100 here, 150 there, but it piled up. I saw notes like, "Refund for mom's car repair," "Groceries, mom," "Pay mom back for brunch." I never even knew these payments were happening. When I casually asked about them, Eli said, "She's done so much for both of us. This is the least I can do for both of us." She was undermining our relationship, not helping. I saved all the screenshots in a folder. That led to a pivotal moment. One morning, Eli was in the shower when her phone pinged. I wasn't snooping, but a notification popped up in her chat with Helen. "Did you already tell him?" My stomach churned. I opened the thread. Helen had written multiple messages. "He's going to find out anyway. He said you'd tell him last week." I'm tired of lying. No one else was in that conversation. Just Helen and Eli. My heart pounded. Where are they hiding? When Eli came out wrapped in a towel, I didn't yell or throw the phone. I handed it to her. She turned pale. "Read it," I said. She didn't. She sank onto the bed, head in her hands. "I was going to tell you," she mumbled. "Tell me what?" I pressed. She admitted that Helen had secretly rented an apartment 2 floors below ours 6 months ago. They kept it from me because it would be awkward if I knew. Helen wanted to monitor us closely, which meant that woman had been in the same building for half a year, watching me come and go, probably from her balcony, never once telling me. Eli had helped her with the move, getting the lease, carrying boxes, all while lying in my face for half a year. I was speechless. "She just wanted to be near us," Eli said. "I didn't think it was a big issue." "Not an issue? Your mother is living directly below us. essentially spying, and you've hidden it for 6 months. That night, I packed a bag and left. From then on, I took each step with care. As mentioned, I already had a place lined up, a one-bedroom, mother-in-law free. My attorney is incredible. We're doing everything methodically by the book. But Helen certainly didn't take it well. I started getting emails from her. Some passive-aggressive, others blatantly hostile. A few examples. Marriage is about forgiveness, not tantrums. You're punishing her for being a good daughter. When you're old and alone, you'll regret all this. I ignored it. She also showed up outside my new building. Yes, she found out just standing there on the sidewalk staring at the windows as if that might summon me. Why didn't come down? She texted. Running away won't fix her attitude. I shared everything with my lawyer who noted it all. To Eli's small credit, she wasn't actively chasing me around, though I know she talked to Helen daily. Probably had no idea how bad this was. Then came the real bombshell. My lawyer found upon reviewing our apartment records that Helen's name was on the deed. Evidently, when we purchased it, Eli added her mother as a silent investor for the down payment, but I contributed most of the initial deposit. The paperwork had been handled by one of Helen's friends in some office. I never saw the fine print, so they slipped Helen's name onto the title. I had no idea, so now it was me versus Eli and Helen. Helen technically had a claim to the property, meaning she could try to block any sale or force Eli to keep it. My attorney said we could challenge it, though. It was clear Eli had arranged this a long time before the fiasco at the restaurant. Maybe since the very beginning. I thought discovering Helen lived 2 floors below me was the worst betrayal. I was wrong. I had no clue how deep it ran until last week. I once believed I was dealing with a controlling mother-in-law and a wife who wouldn't stand up to her. But I didn't realize how deliberate it all was. 2 days ago, Eli texted asking if we could meet and end things amicably. She sounded serious, so I agreed to meet at a cafe. Definitely not Lucas. She arrived carrying a folder. I brought some papers, she said. Nothing official. Just a quick way to settle the property issue. I didn't touch them right away. I asked her what it was. She hesitated. It's basically an informal agreement my mom's lawyer drafted. To clarify who keeps what. I opened the folder and my heart sank after scanning the first page. It was a deed form relinquishing all my rights to the apartment in favor of Helen. Eli explained, "Now you won't have to worry about that place. You're moving out anyway, right? So it's simpler." I stared at her for a solid few seconds. "You want me to give our home to your mother? She already contributed a bit, I said, "I paid almost all of the down payment." She shrugged. "Yeah, but it's complicated now." I shut the folder, got up, and left without a word. Later, I gave it to my attorney. She read it, jaw tightening. "Where'd she get this?" I told her Helen's lawyer wrote it. After flipping through the pages, she said, "This is a total trap. If you signed, you'd be giving up any ownership at all with zero compensation." She leaned back. "You're not divorcing just one woman. You're taking on a mother-daughter duo." That's when I connected the dots. I went through old emails, receipts, half-forgotten chats. I remembered how Helen insisted we use a particular friend's office for the apartment purchase, offering a better rate. I trusted Eli at the time. Turns out that office lost its license for shady deals and document forgeries. Guess who signed the closing paperwork? Eli and Helen, excluding me from entire sections they claimed didn't need my signature. Whether legal or not, it was definitely unethical. My attorney contacted an investigator for possible property fraud charges. The final twist, one that actually made me laugh, was Helen attempting to list our apartment for sale last week behind my back. A neighbor messaged me. "I saw a for sale sign your place. Are you moving?" I checked online and there it was. My address with a scheduled open house and Helen's phone is the contact. I phoned a realtor who was confused. He'd been hired by the co-owner and main investor, told that I had already been paid out. I forwarded it all to my attorney. Now Helen faces scrutiny for fraudulent listings. After that failed quick claim attempt, Eli flooded my phone with texts. First long laments about feeling hurt, then guilt trips. You're throwing away all we built. Finally, anger. You're ruining my life just because you can't stand my mom. I ignored them. One night, she called 11 times and left a voicemail in tears. You have no idea. She was the only one there for me when I had nothing. She gave me everything and now you're taking it from her. That said it all. I wasn't just married to Eli. I was married to Eli and Helen. I've been the third wheel the entire time. The property is currently frozen under investigation. Nobody can sell it until ownership is clarified. My attorney is handling the divorce filing and the property dispute. I've started weekly therapy. I never understood how broken I felt until I walked away from that place. We're keeping a close watch on Helen in case she tries any more stunts like fake listings. If she does, we'll pursue criminal charges. And there are still more things I uncovered about Eli's finances. Likely unknown, even to Helen. I'm prepared to reveal it all. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. By then, the legal battle was full-blown. The divorce was underway. The property was a nightmare. And Helen had already failed in one attempt to secretly sell my apartment. But some folks refused to go down quietly. One Thursday evening, I was eating takeout at my new place when Eli texted me, "Come to Mom's place for dinner. Let's talk." I hesitated because the message felt too polished, too calm. My gut said not to go, but I agreed. Why? I wanted them to say everything to my face. No texts, no hidden documents. I wanted to see them squirm. I needed closure. I arrived at 7 p.m. sharp. Helen opened the door. All smiles like nothing ever happened. The house smelled like meatloaf and entitlement. "Glad you're here. Let's handle this like grown-ups," she said. I didn't smile back. Eli was already seated at the table, looking worn out as if she hadn't slept in weeks. We sat quietly. Then Helen cleared her throat. "We want to discuss the apartment. Find a fair solution." Fair? I nearly laughed. She continued, "You never really had the finances for something that size. Eli and I made it happen. We have to protect our investment." Eli gave a small nod. "We never intended it to end up like this." I set my foot down. "Oh, you mean how you hid the fact that Helen was living 2 floors below me, forged my signature, and tricked me into signing my home over? That part." Helen frowned. "Don't be dramatic." That snapped something in me. I stood up. "You believe it's only about property. It's about how you two disrespected me every day for 6 years. Never once treated me like family. You barely treated me as a real person." Eli said, "I tried." "No, you handed the reins to your mom. You never really left her control. You just dragged her into our place." Helen rose too. "You have no clue how much I've done for my daughter. She owes me everything." I looked from Helen to Eli. "And she gave you everything, including what was supposed to be mine." I pulled out my own folder, bank statements, receipts, proving I had paid 87% of the down payment. I dropped it on the table. Numbers don't lie, no matter what story you spin. A heavy silence followed. Eli stared at the folder without opening it. Helen scoffed. "This is just spiteful. Completely unnecessary." All of a sudden, another voice spoke. "He's not being spiteful. He's telling the truth." It was Helen's sister, Aunt Marie, who must have slipped in unnoticed. Apparently, my attorney had contacted her while tracing Helen's finances linked to a family trust. Marie stepped forward, arms folded. "You want to explain it, Helen? Or should I?" Helen froze. I asked, "Explain what?" Marie turned to me. The money Helen used for that down payment wasn't actually hers. It came from a trust fund left by her late husband meant for younger relatives. She wasn't authorized to touch it, so she falsified documents to pull it out. Your lawyer reached out to me for verification. I felt sick. Eli whispered, "Mom, is that true?" Helen stayed quiet. Marie delivered the final blow. "If it's reported, and it will be, this could lead to fraud charges." Helen screamed, "You're tearing this family apart. You let an outsider come in and look what's happened." Eli sprang up, yelling back, "You did this, Mom. You lied. You made me lie. And you wrecked everything." Helen slapped her right there in front of Marie and me. Eli stood, cheeks flushed, trembling. I picked up my folder and headed for the door. Before exiting, I said, "Keep your lies, but you're not keeping my life, my name, or my future." Then I left. The next day, my attorney filed a motion to freeze the apartment's title. Helen's accounts were flagged, and Marie agreed to testify if need be. Eli emailed me an apology, saying she hadn't known about the trust and regretted all of it. I never replied. Instead, I signed the final divorce papers, sent them to her new P.O. box, and reverted to my old last name the following day. It's been 3 months since that night. I'm in a smaller apartment now. No fancy countertops, no shared mortgage, but it's mine. I sleep better. I laugh louder. I cook my own meals without anyone criticizing how I diced vegetables. Sometimes I look back and feel angry over the past years, how blind I was. But mostly, I'm relieved I escaped. If you're reading this and wondering if you should leave someone who never stands up for you, take this as your sign. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Alejandro Perez, my fiancé, who hadn't shown any sign of life for an entire week, finally called. However, he immediately started questioning me the moment I answered. "Clara Fernandez, what is wrong with you? Our families have already decided the time and place of our wedding. How can you just cancel it like that?" I was about to respond when he interrupted, continuing his outburst. "How many times have I told you that Raquel's health is delicate? Even a cold could easily worsen. I need to be by her side to make sure she's okay at all times. Why are you so easily jealous? Don't you care about her life at all? That's just how life is." I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Last night, I had gone out alone to make the wedding arrangements. On my way home, a speeding truck hit me. I tried to call Alejandro before losing consciousness, but all I heard was that the call went to voicemail. He had deliberately rejected my call. It wasn't until I was on the verge of passing out that a message appeared on my blood-stained phone screen. His impatience with me was clear from the choice of words. "Get to the point." Realizing I hadn't responded immediately, he soon sent another message. "What's wrong with you? Why do you have to call me while I'm trying to comfort Raquel? Don't you know she could hurt herself when she's emotionally unstable?" Even after I woke up, Alejandro continued his rant, scolding me. Suddenly, Melissa stormed into the room and threw my phone on the floor. "Alejandro, are you crazy? Clara was involved in a traffic accident last night. A truck hit her twice. If we hadn't gotten her to the hospital in time, she would have died. Can't you tell the difference between a cold and a traffic accident?" Melissa's voice was sharp with frustration. Alejandro chuckled in response to what she said. "You're lying to a trained doctor, Melissa. You really overestimate your intelligence." And with that, he hung up. Melissa heard the call and clenched the phone tightly. Before I could say anything to console her, her phone began to ring. It was a call from her fiancé, Carlos Sanchez, who also happened to be Alejandro's childhood friend. "Melissa, what are you and Clara up to? Don't you realize Raquel got so worked up with jealousy that she almost had an attack? Can you imagine what could have happened if Alejandro and I hadn't been here? Don't you care about her life at all? The Sanchez family will never welcome such a cruel woman. I don't care if you want to cancel the wedding." Melissa was so upset that she almost cursed out loud. However, she realized Carlos had already betrayed her by cursing out her entire family. I struggled to take her hand. "Don't get angry, Melissa. They're not worth it." Melissa looked at the medical devices connected to my body, her eyes brimming with tears. "Clara, does it still hurt?" I smiled and shook my head. I no longer felt any physical pain. The deepest pain had come when Alejandro hung up on me. Melissa randomly turned on a TV show to lift the mood. We watched and commented on it together. "This guy looks awful. His face is like a monkey. He must be a comedy actor. This scene feels so fake, like it's scripted." However, we soon stopped laughing. Carlos, a famous celebrity in the entertainment industry, appeared on screen. Melissa's expression darkened. She cursed her bad luck and wanted to change the channel, but Carlos's voice stopped her. It was one of those melodramatic moments typical of variety shows. Carlos gazed passionately at the camera and said, "What I regret the most is never confessing my feelings to the girl I liked years ago." People around him started asking questions. Melissa clenched her fist tightly. I patted her arm to calm her, though I felt sorry for her deep inside. Although Carlos and Melissa were engaged, they had never gone public with their relationship. Carlos had claimed that revealing their engagement would hurt his popularity and disrupt his career, even though working in the entertainment industry was just a hobby for him, given his family's wealth. Whenever Melissa spoke up too much, Carlos would lash out and criticize her for not being understanding or supportive of his work. He never acknowledged how tirelessly Melissa worked to squash negative rumors about him, nor how she helped promote his new dramas whenever they aired. Melissa once said she knew it was his dream to succeed in the industry, which was why she did everything she could to help him reach the top. Yet, to Carlos, everything she did came from jealousy. Carlos had always wanted to be a star and believed that the only people who truly understood him were Alejandro and their mutual childhood friend, Mel Suri. Melissa forced a smile as she noticed my worried expression. "It's okay, Clara. We've already decided to cancel our weddings, right? We'll just notify their parents later. Once this is over, we'll be free." I nodded with tears in my eyes. To my surprise, I received a call from Alejandro that night. He sounded annoyed. "Clara, why are you being so irrational? Raquel had a cold. I was there to help her recover. You always think the worst of everything. You decided not to attend the scheduled banquet, something so trivial. Our parents are waiting for you alone, Clara. Be reasonable. Don't make me come to you." Normally, I would have felt sad after being coldly reprimanded by Alejandro and would have ended up accepting his accusations. "Alejandro, since I've decided to cancel the wedding, there's no point in attending this banquet, right?" The phrase "cancel a wedding" infuriated Alejandro even more. He started shouting in anger. "Do you even hear yourself right now? You sound like a crazy woman making decisions based on emotions. I never realized how irrational you really are. I took the initiative to call you. Is it so hard to step back? Everyone is waiting for you here. How much more do you want to embarrass us? You have to come today. Tell me where you are and I'll pick you up right now." I looked at the hospital blanket with its name embroidered on it. I suddenly felt extremely tired. "I'm at the Ion Hospital. Can you pick me up here?" After 2 seconds of silence, I could hear him scoff. "Clara, you're lying just to get me to treat you better. Is that why you said such a thing?" I closed my eyes and let out a bitter laugh. I knew exactly how this would end. I also knew that no matter how bad I felt, he would always prioritize his own needs. Despite knowing all this, I still harbored a sliver of hope. Suddenly, a wave of nausea hit me. I leaned over the edge of the bed and began to vomit. Alejandro remained oblivious and continued speaking in a superior tone. "If you want to throw a tantrum, do it on your own. Don't drag Carlos's fiancée into this." They had agreed to meet with their parents to discuss and finalize their wedding date. Now she's nowhere to be found. Just because you can't handle your own relationship, you've decided to involve others. You even used your own life as an excuse. Don't you think you've gone too far? If I let you get away with it this time, you'll hurt yourself on purpose just to make me do something. No matter what happened, Alejandro would always believe that I orchestrated everything to manipulate his sympathy. At a party last year, Raquel had given me food I was allergic to, causing a high fever that almost took my life. Even then, Alejandro had looked at me coldly and said, "Clara, the way you deceive people makes me sick. You didn't want to marry into my family. You've already tricked my parents into approving our marriage. Why are you still pretending?" To Alejandro, I was a ruthless woman, using self-destructive methods to ruin his relationship with Raquel. In the past, I had desperately tried to explain myself every time he said something like that. But now I was so tired that I didn't even bother defending myself. "Alejandro, I want to cancel the wedding once I recover." After I hung up the call, I felt lighter for the first time in months. The weight I had been carrying on my shoulders had finally lifted. I no longer had to try to please Alejandro or exhaust myself justifying things he would never understand. Melissa sat beside me, still furious over Carlos's words. We both knew those men would never change, and although we had decided to cancel our weddings, the cycle of lies and manipulation was far from over. A few days later, still recovering in the hospital, I received an unexpected call. It was Alejandro's mother, Mrs. Lord. Her tone was sweet but firm. "Clara, dear, I heard you're going through a tough time with Alejandro. That's normal in an engagement, but you must understand that sacrifices are inevitable. He has many responsibilities with Raquel, and you need to be understanding. I hope you'll reconsider canceling the ceremony." I listened in silence, trying to stay calm. She didn't ask how I was or if I needed anything. All she wanted was for me to reconsider the wedding. "Mrs. Lord, I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision. I can't marry someone who abandons me every time I need him." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a cold laugh. "You know, Clara, Alejandro may be difficult, but he's a good man, and a woman like you should feel grateful to have someone like him. Life won't give you another chance with a man like that." I ended the call, disgusted by the cynicism. They saw nothing beyond appearances and control. The truth was that Alejandro wasn't a good man. He was selfish, spoiled, and I could finally see that clearly. Melissa stayed by my side all day in the hospital, trying to lighten the mood with jokes about how our lives could make a great Mexican soap opera. We both laughed, but there was bitterness in our laughter. No matter how much we tried to hide it, the pain of betrayal was an open wound. A few days later, Alejandro showed up at the hospital unannounced. He entered the room with a cold expression, as if he was there out of obligation. "I came to sort this out once and for all, Clara. Tell me what you want to end this nonsense. Do you want to expose me? 'Cause a scandal? Because if that's what you're after, it won't work." I stared at him, unable to believe how far his arrogance could go. "I don't want anything, Alejandro. I just want you to leave me alone." He laughed as if I had just told the funniest joke in the world. "Of course you want something. Women like you always want something." Melissa stood up, furious, and stepped toward him. "That's enough, Alejandro. You left her in the hospital to chase after Raquel, and now you have the nerve to come here and insult us." He ignored her completely and turned to me. "I knew you'd drag Melissa into this mess. It's not enough for you to ruin our relationship. You want to destroy others' lives too. Leave, Alejandro," I whispered, exhausted. "Not before making one thing clear," he said, leaning over the bed. "You are never enough for me, and you never will be." As soon as he left, I felt a knot unravel in my chest. It hurt to hear those words, but I was finally free. Recovery at the hospital was slow, but little by little I regained my strength. Melissa was always with me, and together we planned our next step. We didn't just want to leave those abusive relationships. We wanted to make it clear to everyone what we had endured. Shortly after, we found out that Raquel and Alejandro were hosting an engagement party to make their relationship official. Photos began circulating on social media, showing them radiant and happy. Melissa and I exchanged glances, and we knew exactly what to do. We went to the party. We entered unannounced, blending into the crowd. Alejandro and Raquel were the center of attention, surrounded by friends and family. When they saw us, their faces turned pale. "What are you doing here?" Alejandro asked, his voice slow but furious. "We just wanted to wish you happiness," Melissa replied with a fake smile. "You both deserve it." Before they could react, we pulled out our phones and started live streaming. Melissa turned to the camera and began speaking in a firm voice. "Hello everyone, this is the engagement party of Alejandro and Raquel. But before we toast to the happy couple, we'd like to share some things about how we got here." Alejandro tried to interrupt her, but I stepped in, blocking his way. "No, Alejandro, it's our turn to speak now." The crowd around us began murmuring, confused and intrigued. Melissa told everything. How they had manipulated, humiliated, and discarded us. With each word, Alejandro and Raquel sank deeper into their own shame. When we finished, an awkward silence filled the room. Alejandro tried to defend himself, but no one wanted to listen. The live stream was flooded with supportive comments for us and disdain for them. We left the party feeling accomplished, but we knew this was just the beginning. Alejandro and Raquel would try to bounce back, but we were ready for every step they took. We knew this war was far from over, but this time we would be the ones setting the rules of the game. Melissa and I left the party knowing that the live stream had ignited a spark that wouldn't fade anytime soon. The video went viral within hours on social media. Most of the comments were on our side, while Alejandro, Raquel, and Carlos became targets of heavy criticism. The narrative had shifted, and for the first time, the control was in our hands. The next morning, Alejandro tried to contact me multiple times, sending messages and leaving voicemails, but it wasn't out of remorse. He was desperate because his and Raquel's public image was in shambles. His family's company, which relied heavily on a good reputation, began losing contracts. Investors started pulling out, and customers boycotted their business. Tabloids kept publishing the scandal, turning their engagement party into a national joke. Carlos didn't escape unscathed either. As a public figure, the revelation that he had cheated on and manipulated Melissa caused his career to collapse. TV producers dropped him from new projects, sponsors cut ties, and his agents abandoned him. Once a promising celebrity, Carlos became an example of how the public no longer tolerated abuse and hypocrisy. A few weeks later, I received a formal letter from Alejandro's lawyers. They wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement and delete the video in exchange for financial compensation. Melissa and I laughed at the proposal. We didn't want money, we wanted our freedom and, above all, justice. So instead of accepting the agreement, we hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit for defamation and emotional damages. In court, Alejandro tried to play the victim, claiming it was all just a misunderstood personal vendetta. Raquel cried and portrayed herself as a loyal friend, insisting everything had been twisted by our jealousy. But we had plenty of evidence. Messages, recordings, and even witnesses who confirmed how they had manipulated and mistreated us. During the trial, when Alejandro and Raquel realized there was no way out, they turned on each other. Alejandro revealed that Raquel had always had ulterior motives in their friendship, while she exposed Alejandro's lies and infidelities, trying to save herself. Their image crumbled further with every revelation. In the end, we won the case. Alejandro was ordered to pay significant damages for the harm he had caused, and Raquel lost all her credibility. His family's company, unable to recover from the PR crisis, went bankrupt. They lost everything: status, money, and influence. Carlos also faced consequences. Ostracized from the entertainment industry, he tried to rebuild his image with videos on social media, but people never forgot what he had done. His fame turned into infamy, and he became known as a symbol of arrogance and failure. With the court victory, Melissa and I finally felt like we had closed that chapter of suffering. But we didn't stop there. We used the visibility we had gained to launch an organization that helps women escape abusive and manipulative relationships. We transformed our pain into a greater cause, and it gave us a new purpose. Years later, at a charity event organized by our foundation, I saw Alejandro for the last time. He was unrecognizable, worn down, without the arrogant glow he once had, volunteering and asking for donations. When our eyes met, he tried to speak to me, but I simply smiled and walked away, knowing that he no longer had any power over me. Melissa and I had finally found the peace we had long sought. We discovered new paths, built genuine friendships, and most importantly, learned to value ourselves. What began as a story of betrayal and humiliation ended in personal triumph and an opportunity to change lives. Now we were free, and this time it was us who set the rules of the game. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I'm 28. My name's Nathan. And until about 2 weeks ago, I thought my family actually liked having me around. I'm not saying we were picture perfect or anything. We had our share of awkward silences and occasional backhanded comments at dinner, but I honestly thought we were okay. Not close, but okay. I was the middle kid between two sisters. Jenna, the oldest at 31, and Liv, the youngest, still in college at 21. I was the one who moved out early, worked through college, started my own small business, and didn't ask for much. I was never the favorite, not by a long shot. That title's been glued to Jenna since birth. Always the overachiever. Always the one mom bragged about to her friends like she was some kind of investment that paid dividends in wedding photos and Instagram likes. But still, I showed up. I sent gifts. I chipped in for holidays. I was part of things. Or so I thought. A few months ago, Mom floated the idea of a family reset vacation. Something warm, something international. Her words. She said it was time to reconnect, that we'd all been drifting apart and needed to make memories while we still could. I rolled my eyes when she said that, but agreed anyway. I even offered to help with the planning, find group rates, figure out logistics, but Jenna stepped in, of course, with her spreadsheet and her 5-step itinerary. "Let me handle it," she said with that perfectly controlled smile she always uses when she's about to bulldoze your idea. So, I let her because that's what I always do. Weeks passed, then months. Every time I asked about the trip, it was still in the works. Jenna claimed the travel agent was slow. Liv said she was waiting on her spring schedule to drop. Mom said the passports were being checked. And then out of nowhere, Jenna texted me that the whole thing was being postponed. Something about airline strikes or new COVID requirements in the country we were supposed to go to. "It's a mess," she wrote. "We'll reschedule once everything calms down." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Sure. Something in me felt off. There was no official group chat about it. No cancellation email, no refund chatter. But I didn't push. I figured life got in the way. Then Saturday rolled around. I was in line at Target, of all places, arms full of frozen meals and paper towels, when my phone buzzed. Instagram. A new story. Jenna had posted a boomerang from an airport lounge. Her manicured nails holding a mimosa, a fancy suitcase in the background. The caption read, "Finally, family reset begins now. #blessed. My heart sank, but I told myself maybe it was something else. Maybe she meant her little family, her husband and kid. Maybe Mom and Liv weren't there. Then Liv posted a selfie. Sunglasses, boarding pass, neck pillow, ready for the chaos. LOL, she captioned it. In the reflection of her glasses, I could literally see Jenna posing with Mom in the background. I just stood there, frozen in the checkout line, letting the guy behind me sigh in irritation as I stared at my screen. They went without me. I didn't say a word. Not to Jenna. Not to Liv. Not even to Mom. I paid for my stuff, drove home in silence, and sat in my apartment for hours, just replaying it in my head. The months of "we'll see." The fake airline excuse, the silence. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a scheduling thing. They deliberately excluded me. They lied and then had the nerve to post about it like I didn't exist. It wasn't just the trip. It was the culmination of everything. Every time I'd been the backup plan, the extra seat, the one asked to chip in last minute but left out of the planning. I thought of Christmas 2 years ago, when they all coordinated matching sweaters without telling me. Or Jenna's baby shower, where my name wasn't even on the program despite buying half the decorations. Or the time I paid for Mom's car repairs and she told everyone it was a miracle her favorite mechanic gave her a discount. I could go on, but I won't, because by then, something inside me had already clicked. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. Not in the way you might expect. What I felt was colder, sharper. It was clarity. It was the quiet, calm realization that they didn't think I'd ever say anything, that I'd just swallow it again. So, I decided to make sure that this time they'd remember. I waited, not for long, just until I saw the next post. Jenna tagging the hotel, a beach resort, one I recognized because I'd researched it back when I still thought I'd be going. Their check-in photos were all smiles and tropical drinks. Mom had a sun hat on that I bought her last year. Jenna's kid was building a sand castle in the background. Liv was stretched out on a lounge chair with a book she once borrowed from my place and never returned. They looked happy, relaxed, unbothered, as if I'd never existed. That's when I logged into something they'd all forgotten about. See, a few years back, when we were planning a Christmas trip that never happened, long story, I'd booked everyone airline accounts with my business travel points. I was working with a vendor at the time who offered package perks for group accounts. Free checked bags, automatic upgrades, and access to a shared dashboard to view itinerary info. I managed the whole thing. None of them ever changed their passwords. And for some reason, Jenna never unlinked her hotel app from our shared email either. Rookie mistake. So I spent that Saturday night going through every detail. Flight numbers, room bookings, restaurant reservations, and I found just the right thing. Let's just say by the time they landed, the surprise was waiting. And within an hour of touchdown, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Jenna. Missed call. Liv. Text. Are you serious right now? Mom. Voicemail. The tone not exactly beachy, but I didn't answer. Not yet, because I wanted them to sit in it first. I wanted the silence to feel personal. I wanted them to wonder what else I knew. I wanted to give them time to realize exactly what they'd done. I didn't answer that first night. Not the second either. My phone was a mess of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, increasingly frantic texts. It started with confusion. Jenna. Something's wrong with the hotel reservation. Call me. Then Liv chimed in. Did you cancel the spa booking? They said our appointment's gone. That was followed by Mom's classic passive-aggressive flare. I don't know what's going on, but this is not the time for your games. Nathan. As if I was the one playing games. As if being lied to and excluded was just something I should quietly accept with a nod and a smile. By the morning of day 3, things escalated. Jenna left a voicemail that began politely, "Look, we can talk about this like adults." But by the end, she was snapping that I had ruined everything and that her son had cried when they had to leave the resort early. That made me pause, not because I felt guilty, but because that kid deserves better than to be used like a guilt prop in his mother's tantrums. Let me back up and explain what exactly happened. Once I had access to their itinerary, I noticed something. They hadn't paid in full. The room was under Jenna's name, but the final charge hadn't hit yet. It was one of those pay-at-check-in deals. Same with the airport shuttle and the spa appointments. Normally, that would be fine, but since Jenna had never updated her profile, all of those bookings were still visible on the dashboard linked to my business email. And more importantly, so was the cancellation button. I didn't nuke everything. I'm not a monster. I left the first night alone. I even let them enjoy their airport shuttle. But once I saw them smugly posing with drinks by the infinity pool and laughing in matching swimwear, I clicked cancel on nights 2 through 5. Hotel policy. Free cancellation up to 24 hours before check-in. I was just within the window. They weren't charged, but they also weren't allowed to stay. By the time they came back from dinner that night, the front desk was waiting with confused smiles and news that their remaining nights had been canceled by the original party. Jenna threw a fit. I know because the receptionist emailed me. Me, not her, to confirm the cancellation due to the conflicting information provided by the guests. I could picture it perfectly. Jenna demanding an upgrade. Mom trying to leverage, I'm a mother energy. Liv rolling her eyes while pretending not to be involved. They scrambled for an alternate place to stay. I checked their travel log again the next morning. Sure enough, they'd rebooked at a budget hotel farther inland. Not quite the luxury beach escape they'd envisioned. And the cherry on top, they lost their spa booking, something I knew Mom had been bragging about for weeks. I didn't even need to cancel it. I just logged into the system and rescheduled it for the day after they left. They showed up to the spa expecting facials and foot rubs, and instead got told they'd already enjoyed their treatment yesterday at 11 a.m. You'd think that would be the end of it. But it got worse because I also remembered something no one else did. Jenna had been using my company's travel rewards card for all her planning expenses, a perk I'd given her years ago so she could help coordinate a birthday trip for Mom. She never gave it back. I let it slide. But this time, when I saw thousands in resort and flight charges pending under my business ledger after they lied to my face, I flagged them. Not fraud. I'm not trying to ruin my credit, but I marked them as unauthorized employee charges and sent a formal inquiry to the rewards vendor, which froze the points used for their upgrades and pulled the lounge access privileges. That's why I started getting texts like, "The lounge rejected us, and they say we don't have travel status anymore." And finally, "Nathan, what did you do?" I still hadn't responded. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but I was trying to make a point. They'd excluded me, lied to me, used the resources I provided. then had the gall to rub it in my face online like I was some stranger who didn't matter, like I wasn't family, like I'd never been. And for once, I wanted the silence to speak louder than any apology they were rehearsing. But then Liv called again. This time I answered. Her voice cracked before she even got the first sentence out. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "We didn't think you'd, care that much." That hit me in a way I didn't expect. "I care," I said. "I always have. That's the whole problem." She was quiet for a beat, then said, "It wasn't my idea. Jenna planned the whole thing. I just thought maybe you'd bail anyway." "Is that what you think of me?" I asked. "That I just vanish?" She didn't answer that part. She just sighed and said, "Mom's furious." I almost laughed. Of course she is. The spa didn't have cucumber water ready. Liv didn't laugh. She said, "You always take things too far." I paused, then asked, "And not inviting your own son to a family vacation? That wasn't too far." Another long silence. Then she whispered, "I didn't think it had hurt you this much." And there it was. They didn't think I'd care. That I mattered enough to be hurt. That excluding me wasn't cruelty. It was convenience because I'd always played it cool. Always been the one to smooth things over, make the payment, send the card, show up with the gift, shrug off the slight. Not anymore. Not this time. The silence was heavy again. Then she said, "Jenna wants to call you." I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Tell her I'm busy. Maybe we'll reschedule once everything calms down." And I hung up. The calls didn't stop. Not after Liv. Not after that short, clipped conversation that told me everything I needed to know. Over the next day, my phone became a war zone of passive-aggressive damage control. Jenna texted me paragraphs that started off diplomatic, like she was trying to negotiate a ceasefire, but then dipped into snide territory so fast I had to read some of them twice just to believe her nerve. One of them actually said, "You made your point. Congratulations. Now, can you stop acting like a child so we can enjoy what's left of this trip?" Acting like a child. That's rich. Coming from someone who orchestrated a fake cancellation, then posed on the beach like nothing happened. But the tone, that was vintage Jenna. Tight smile, underlying venom, always trying to control the narrative, always pretending it was a misunderstanding when it was just her being cruel with too much polish. Mom's messages were different. Short, cold. I could practically hear her voice through the punctuation. "This wasn't the way to handle things. You've embarrassed us. You've made a scene. Funny how when they exclude me, it's just how things worked out. But when I push back, suddenly I'm embarrassing. Suddenly, I'm the one making a scene." But what finally got me wasn't a message from Jenna or even Mom. It was an email from the hotel. Subject line, "Incident report, billing dispute." Inside was a short note from the hotel manager saying there had been an issue with the room charges and that the guest on file, Jenna, had refused to provide an alternate payment method when the card on file was declined. The same card, of course, that had been flagged and frozen the moment I reported unauthorized use. Apparently, after I canceled the stay, the resort had tried to reauthorize their new booking using the linked account. When it bounced, Jenna had tried using Mom's card, which was flagged too, because Mom naturally had tied her own resort account to the same travel dashboard I set up years ago. These people never changed a thing. Now, the resort was requesting direct contact from the primary account holder, aka me. They wanted a resolution before escalating the matter. And that's when it hit me. They were still hoping I'd clean it up, still assuming I'd fix it the way I always had. For years, I've been the one they quietly relied on. The one who made the phone calls, handled the refunds, paid the overages, caught the mistakes they didn't even know they were making. I've bailed them out of so many messes I lost count. But this time, I wasn't going to pick up the pieces. I forwarded the email to Jenna. No note, no explanation, just the forwarded message. Subject unchanged. Within 10 minutes, she called me. I let it ring, then again. Then again. I finally answered on the fourth ring. Her voice was clipped. "No, hi. No, how are you? Just you've made your point. This has gone way too far." "Not nearly far enough," I said. There was a long pause. Then she said, "You want an apology? Fine, you should have told us you felt excluded." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the phone like it was infected. I didn't feel excluded, Jenna. I was excluded. You lied to me. We didn't lie. Plans changed. You said the trip was canceled. They were, she snapped. We rebooked. You rebooked the same resort, same week, same people without me. That's not rebooking. That's rerouting the group to leave me out. Another pause, then quieter. You overreacted. I laughed. Not bitterly, not loudly. Just the kind of laugh that comes when someone gives you exactly what you expect from them. Nothing more. You didn't even think I'd notice, I said. That's the part that stings. Jenna's voice dropped into that condescending calm she always used when she wanted to sound like the bigger person. You have your own life, Nate. You've always been distant. I figured you'd be fine with it. There it was. The rewrite, the gaslight, blaming me for their exclusion. I didn't even argue. I am fine, I said. I just wanted to make sure you weren't. She scoffed. So, this was revenge. No, I said. It was balance. She tried again. You could have just talked to us. You mean like how you talked to me about the trip? Click. I ended the call and that, I thought, would be the last of it. But it wasn't, because the next day Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. In person. I heard the knock and checked the peephole, expecting maybe a package, maybe a neighbor. But it was her standing there with her purse clutched tight, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy, jaw locked like she was preparing to testify in a murder trial. I didn't open the door. Not immediately. I just stood there watching her through the peephole, thinking about all the years I bent over backward trying to earn a place at the table. Now the table was flipped, and suddenly I was the one with the closed door. She knocked again, firmer. Nathan, she said, voice muffled. This is ridiculous. Still, I didn't answer because I wanted her to feel it. That cold weight of being left out. Not out of cruelty, but out of consequence. And that's when she said something that made me finally step back from the door. Not open it. Just step back. As if I'd been hit. She said, I told Jenna we should have invited you. She said, you just ruined the trip. That was it. No apology. No. I'm sorry we hurt you. Just confirmation that they debated my worth and lost. I didn't open the door. Not then. Not after she said that. I heard the words, you just ruined the trip, and felt them settle somewhere beneath my ribs. It wasn't even the cruelty that stung the most. It was the fact that Mom didn't deny it. She didn't say Jenna was wrong. She didn't even try to soften the blow. Just stood there, half scolding me like I was the one being unreasonable. I waited until I heard her footsteps retreat, the faint sound of heels echoing down the hall. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. It wasn't relief. It was something heavier, like a final weight settling where hope used to live. For the next couple of days, I kept my head down. I went to work, cooked my own meals, and I stayed off social media. I didn't want to see beach photos or passive-aggressive captions. I didn't want to see Liv posting sad quotes or Jenna posting filtered family selfies pretending everything was normal. I knew they'd spin it, that they'd tell everyone I lashed out or overreacted, that I'd sabotaged the trip for no reason. But deep down, they knew the truth. And now, so did I. A week later, I got a formal letter from the airline's loyalty program. My account had been permanently closed due to excessive flagging of legitimate charges. Jenna must have filed some sort of complaint to protect her status. I shrugged. I didn't care. That program was only ever valuable to them, not me. I traveled alone when I did. I didn't need upgrades or lounge access. I just needed peace, and I had it. For the first time in years, I wasn't tangled in group chats or birthday reminders or emergency last-minute requests for money or, can you call and fix this for us favors? My phone was quiet. My weekends were mine. No guilt-tripped family dinners. No one calling just to check in. But then guilt-tripping me into buying a last-minute wedding gift for a cousin I hadn't seen in 10 years. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that they'd just let me go. But about 3 weeks later, I got an invitation in the mail. An actual paper envelope, thick cardstock, my name printed in big sweeping letters. The Wilson family summer celebration. A backyard party, the kind we used to do when I was a kid. Grill out. music, photos under string lights, all smiles and plastic forks and mosquito spray. The card was signed in Jenna's handwriting. Let's put everything behind us. No apology, just reset. Like nothing happened. Like I should just show up, smile, and hand over a tray of deviled eggs. I didn't RSVP. Instead, I did something different. I sent an envelope of my own. Inside, I put photocopies of every receipt from the trip. The canceled hotel booking, the flag spa appointments, the travel card freeze, and most importantly, a printout of a Venmo request I'd received from Liv last month. $183.47 for that Airbnb I forgot I still owed you for LOL. On the back of the final page I wrote, "Forgiveness is free, access isn't." And I mailed it directly to Mom's house. I didn't hear back. Not for a while, but I didn't expect to. What I did expect and got was the ripple, because 2 weeks after that, my cousin Riley texted me out of nowhere. "Hey man, I don't know what went down, but your mom told Grandma you're distancing yourself. She made it sound like you were just going through something." I laughed when I read that. Going through something? As if I hadn't just spent years carrying the emotional labor of an entire family. As if distancing myself was some moody little tantrum, not a deliberate boundary I'd carved out with surgical precision. I texted him back one sentence. I finally started acting like they treated me. He didn't reply, but he didn't need to. The next time a family group photo went up, I wasn't in it. No more awkward cropping. No more oops, forgot to tell you about the dinner. No more pretending. Just a clean break. Months passed. I started spending more time with friends, people who actually listened when I spoke, who invited me to things because they wanted me there, not because they needed something from me. I took a short trip up north by myself. No itinerary, no group texts, no compromise. I booked the cheapest room with my own card and watched the rainfall on a lake while sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. It was the most peaceful I'd felt in years. I don't know if they still talk about me at family gatherings. Maybe they say I cut them off. Maybe they say I overreacted. Maybe they spin it like they tried. But I know better. I know the truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't expect consequences. They expected silence. They expected compliance. And for a long time, that's what I gave them. But not anymore. The next time someone says, "Family is everything," I'll smile and say, only if they act like it. Because family isn't just blood and matching t-shirts and group photos. It's loyalty, respect, inclusion, and the moment you make someone feel like a guest in their own family, you don't get to act surprised when they stop coming over. So no, I didn't ruin the trip. They did when they booked it without me. All I did was make sure the next one came with a cost, and I never looked back. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My name is Kale. I'm 31. And if there's one thing I've learned from being the middle child of a family that worships appearances, it's that being invisible doesn't mean you're forgotten. It just means they're pretending you don't exist until they need something. For years, I played the part of the agreeable one. Not because I lacked a spine, but because standing your ground in a family like mine meant setting off a series of small emotional grenades no one wanted to deal with. My older sister, Bree, was always the star, the one with the perfect Instagram life, the Pinterest boards for every holiday, and a sense of entitlement so polished you could see your reflection in it. And my mom, let's just say she ran PR for Bree like it was her full-time job. Me, I was the quiet one, the one who worked behind the scenes, the one they called when someone's car broke down or when a deposit needed topping up just until payday. So when Bree got engaged, I kept my expectations low. I sent a congratulatory text, offered to help if needed, and otherwise stayed in my lane. I didn't expect to be asked to be part of the wedding party. Didn't expect any special recognition. God forbid I upstage her with my very average presence. But I did assume, foolishly, that I'd at least be treated like family, especially considering I'd been quietly funding things here and there over the past year. Helping Mom pay her half of the engagement party venue when Bree accidentally forgot the invoice, covering the florist deposit when Dad's card got declined, even floating Bree a few $100 when she miscalculated her dress budget. I never made a show of it, never asked for thanks, but I did think it bought me at least one seat, just one. The wedding day arrived with the kind of suffocating perfection only Bree could pull off. Every detail screamed curated elegance. The rustic vineyard venue with the vintage lanterns, the gold-foiled menus, the hand-painted signs reminding everyone to cherish this moment. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in the navy suit Bree had once told me wasn't too distracting, holding a simple card with an envelope inside my gift. A sizable financial one, since I knew they were eyeing an expensive honeymoon package in Italy. It was my way of saying, I support you, even if I don't matter much to you. As I approached the check-in table, I gave my name, expecting the usual nod and direction. Instead, the young girl flipping through the guest list squinted, frowned and said, I don't see a Kale listed here. Are you sure you're not someone's plus one? I blinked, then gave her my last name. Still nothing. A man beside her leaned over, checked the printed sheet and said, Sorry, sir. Maybe try the overflow table. Overflow. Confused, I walked toward the reception area, scanning the beautifully arranged tables with their ivory centerpieces and gold-rimmed glasses. Each place setting had a name, and I didn't see mine anywhere. I spotted my cousin Ava, who waved me over awkwardly, then leaned in with a sympathetic smile. Kale, I think you're by the back, like near the bathrooms. I don't know why. They said they were tight on space. Tight on space, right? Except I saw Bree's high school friend, who she hadn't spoken to in a decade, sitting front and center, laughing with my aunt. And then I saw him. My ex, Micah, the same man who ghosted me after 2 years together, who just so happened to now be Bree's best friend's roommate. He was in the front row, wearing a tailored suit and smiling like he belonged there. And I apparently didn't. I stood frozen, staring until I felt a gentle hand on my arm. My mother, dressed in a pale blush gown, her makeup immaculate, not a hair out of place. She looked at me like someone who just spotted a stain on her favorite dress. Kale, she said, voice low and clipped. I didn't know you'd actually come. IRSVP'd? I replied, confused and trying not to let my voice crack. She smiled, one of those brittle, polite ones that never reached the eyes. We just weren't sure. You know how you are with gatherings. And well, Bree worked so hard to curate a certain aesthetic. You understand, right? Aesthetic. That word echoed in my head like a slap. I turned to look again. My seat was there, next to the swinging door that led to the restrooms. A single folding chair, metal, no name tag, not even a centerpiece, just a plain white napkin. The humiliation burned through me like acid. I looked down at the envelope in my hand, the one with the check inside. A generous one, something I knew would have helped them afford those beachfront suites Bree kept gushing about. I wanted to leave. I should have just left. But then I remembered every time I'd swallowed my pride so they wouldn't have to feel awkward. Every joke at my expense brushed off as just teasing. Every quiet withdrawal from my account to cover someone else's mess. Every time my parents forgot my birthday but made a production of Bree's. And I knew I wasn't going to walk away quietly. This time, with a calm I didn't quite feel, I walked down the center of the venue, past the laughing guests and the string quartet playing some classical piece I didn't recognize. I reached the head table. Bree turned, all glowing skin and pin-back curls, mid-laugh. When she saw me, her smile faltered. I held her gaze. I could feel the silence ripple around me, the way people instinctively sense something off. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the envelope, and placed it gently on the table in front of her. Then, just loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, You can pay for your own honeymoon now. Her mouth dropped open. A few heads turned. I saw Micah shift uncomfortably in his seat. My mother's face drained of color, but I didn't wait for a reply. I turned on my heel and walked toward the exit. I didn't look back as I walked past the photo booth, past the perfectly arranged macarons, past the welcome sign that read, Bree and Callum, a love story written in the stars. All I heard behind me was the growing murmur of confusion, clinks of forks pausing mid-bite, chairs creaking as people leaned in, whispers breaking through the forced cheer. I reached my car with my pulse pounding in my ears and sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel, hands trembling. Not with regret, but with the aftershock of years' worth of swallowed indignities finally bursting free. I didn't cry, not right away, but when I turned the key in the ignition, the tears came, and not out of sadness, but a deep, aching exhaustion, like my soul had been carrying a weight for too long, and I'd finally set it down. I drove home in silence, ignoring the flurry of messages that lit up my phone within 10 minutes of leaving. First, a text from Leo, my brother. "Dude, what is going on?" Then from my aunt. "You okay?" That was unexpected. Then a call from Mom, which I let go to voicemail. Then another and another. I finally turned my phone off when Bree's name popped up on the screen. I knew exactly what that call was going to be. Not an apology, not an attempt to understand, just damage control. When I woke up the next morning, it was like a dam had broken overnight. 37 unread messages. For voicemails, even an email from Bree titled, "Unbelievable." I opened it against my better judgment. "Kale, I don't even know where to begin. I tried to be gracious. I didn't even make a scene when you just showed up, even though you weren't confirmed. And then you embarrassed me in front of everyone during the head table toast. I was crying in the bridal suite for an hour while Callum tried to calm me down. Mom said you were probably just feeling left out, but honestly, you should be ashamed. We had a vision. We had a theme. You know how important that day was for me, and you made it about you. Please send the check when you've calmed down. We already booked the hotel and can't get a refund. Bree." That last line, "Please send the check," as if my boundary was just a tantrum, as if my pain could be placated with a delayed donation. I stared at the email for a while, trying to decide whether I was more angry or amazed at the gall. Eventually, I just closed my laptop and went about my day. I didn't respond. I didn't need to because the real unraveling hadn't even started yet. 2 days later, I got a call from Callum's older sister, Jasmine. We'd only met once briefly at a family barbecue, but she remembered me. She said she hoped it wasn't too weird to call, but she just wanted to ask me something. "Did you really not have a seat?" she asked softly. "Because that's not what Bree's telling people." I told her the truth. Every detail. The folding chair, the non-existent name card, the aesthetic comment. The way my ex had a better seat than I did. The way my mother pretended like it was perfectly normal. There was a long pause and then she exhaled. "That actually explains a lot." Apparently, Callum's family had noticed strange things, too. Guests who were bumped last minute, people who were told their plus ones couldn't come due to space. And Callum's grandfather, who uses a wheelchair, being seated at the very end of a long table where no one helped him navigate. "And Callum was livid when you left," Jasmine added. "He had no idea. I didn't know how to respond to that. Livid at me or at Bree. It didn't matter much because the fallout kept spiraling." My cousin Ava texted me later that night with a blurry photo of the seating chart she'd snapped on her phone. My name was nowhere on it, but Micah's was in block letters, "Front table, left side." "Did she invite him instead of you?" Ava wrote, "Because it kind of looks like it." Then came the Facebook posts. Bree had started uploading the wedding album, curated highlights only, of course. Except people noticed I wasn't in a single picture. Not the group photo, not the ceremony, not even candid crowd shots. That's when the comments started trickling in. Polite at first. "Did Kale not make it? Where's your brother?" Then slightly more pointed. "Heard something happened at the wedding. Hope everything's okay." That's when Bree took down the entire album. Just wiped it. No explanation. 3 days after the wedding, my mother showed up at my apartment. No warning. Just knocked like she used to when I was in college and missed dinner again. She was holding a pink bakery box. Lemon bars. My favorite. I didn't open the door. "Kale, honey," she said to the door. "Can we talk?" I stayed quiet. "You embarrassed your sister." Still quiet. "You know I hate when things escalate like this." Eventually, she left the box on my doorstep and walked away. I watched from the peephole, heart pounding, hands curled into fists. Not out of rage, just this deep ache. Like I'd spent my whole life hoping for something soft from her. Something real. And all she had were baked goods and guilt trips. The lemon bars went straight into the trash. By the end of the week, I had heard from nearly every extended family member. Some were neutral, curious, cautious. Others were outraged on Bree's behalf. But a few quietly admitted they'd seen this pattern, too. That I wasn't crazy. That this wasn't just one bad day. It was years of being the convenient one. The background character in a drama I was never allowed to star in. I started getting invitations to coffee. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to catch up. An uncle offered to reimburse me for part of the wedding gift I'd almost given. And then, most surprisingly of all, I got a text from Callum. "Hey, Kale, can we talk?" I let the message from Callum sit for almost 2 days. It wasn't out of spite. I just didn't know what I wanted from that conversation. Part of me was still raw, still processing the realization that I had been deliberately excluded, not just forgotten. Another part was afraid that whatever he had to say would be some carefully worded plea to keep quiet and let everything die down for the sake of Bree's public image. She was obsessed with optics, and I just tossed a Molotov cocktail into her curated narrative. But then I thought back to what Jasmine had said, how Callum had been livid, how he'd supposedly had no idea. That didn't match the person Bree always painted him to be. So finally I replied, "I'll talk, but not on the phone." We met at a quiet little cafe downtown, one of those indie places with mismatched mugs and lopsided shelves of books no one ever reads. I got there early, chose a table in the corner, and waited with a growing pit in my stomach. When he walked in, he looked tired, not groomed to perfection the way he was in the wedding photos. He saw me, offered a small wave, and slid into the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low. I didn't answer right away. I just watched him, waiting. He exhaled through his nose. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry. I didn't know about the seating, about the guest list, about Micah, any of it. That last one hit me harder than I expected." "You didn't know Micah was invited?" I asked, skeptical. "No," he said firmly. "Bree told me you weren't coming. She said you didn't RSVP. That you had a weird thing about weddings and big social events." I almost laughed. It sounded exactly like something Bree would say. Just enough truth to sound plausible. Just enough distance to avoid direct blame. "I RSVP'd through the website," I said flatly. "Weeks ago." Callum ran a hand down his face, looking exhausted. "She handled all the planning herself. I should have paid more attention, but everything happened so fast. I didn't say anything. Let the silence do the heavy lifting." He finally looked up. "She lied to me, Kale. And not just about you, about a lot of things. I'm still piecing things together." I studied him. There was something in his eyes. Regret, yes, but also that slow dawning awareness you see in people when they realize they married a mask and are only now starting to see the face beneath it. "I don't know if it's my place," I said after a moment, "but you might want to check the receipts for that honeymoon because I know for a fact my mom said you two couldn't afford the upgrade. That's why I was giving the check. Not out of obligation, but because I believed she loved you." He nodded slowly. "She told me it was covered by her parents, that they wanted to gift us the upgrade as a surprise." I blinked. "They didn't," I said. He swallowed hard. "I figured." We sat in silence for a while, the noise of the cafe drifting around us like background static. Then he leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice barely above a whisper. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Why didn't you just leave?" His eyes searched mine. "When you saw your seat, when they said those things, why didn't you just walk away?" I stared down at my untouched drink for a moment, then back at him. "Because I've been walking away my whole life," I said. "Every time they made me feel like I was too much or not enough. Every time I was the family joke or the errand boy or the backup plan. I walked away quietly so they wouldn't feel bad. But this time they embarrassed me on purpose, publicly. And I wanted them to know, really know, that I wasn't going to let it slide anymore." Callum nodded slowly, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "She told me to give this to you," he said after she found out we were meeting. I didn't take it. "I'm guessing it's not an apology," I muttered. He gave a humorless chuckle. "No, well, she's asking you not to talk about this to anyone. Says it's hurting her reputation." "Oh," I said. "The truth's inconvenient." He nodded again, and this time there was a flicker of something stronger in his face. Anger, maybe, or shame. I didn't know who I married, he admitted. I leaned back. You might have married the version she sells to the world. We all did, in our own way. We didn't talk much more after that. He paid for the drinks, thanked me for meeting him, and left with a quiet, heavy step. The next few days were weird, calmer in some ways, but with an eerie tension simmering under the surface. Bree hadn't contacted me directly, but her orbit had. A friend of hers messaged me on Instagram, passive-aggressively calling me dramatic and telling me real family doesn't blow up weddings over one chair. I didn't respond. Didn't need to because the tide was turning. And Mara, one of the more outspoken voices in the family, called me and said, I looked at that photo you were in, the one from the party last year. You were sitting in the back then, too. I just didn't see it at the time. Her voice cracked a little. None of you did, I said gently, because I never made it a problem. There was a pause. I'm sorry, Kale. The next day, she posted a photo on Facebook. Not from the wedding, but from a family reunion a few years ago. A candid one. Me holding my niece, smiling softly while everyone else was crowding around Bree. Her caption just read, Sometimes the quietest ones are the ones holding everything together. That post got more likes than all of Bree's wedding photos combined. Later that week, I got a text from my mother. We need to talk. You've made things very difficult. I waited a full day before even opening that text from my mother. Not because I didn't see it, but because I wanted to sit with the feeling it gave me. That familiar cocktail of obligation, guilt, and quiet rage. You've made things very difficult. Not let's talk. Not I'm sorry. Not help me understand. Just a sentence that placed the blame once again squarely on me. I finally opened it on a rainy Thursday evening, curled up on my couch, listening to the patter of rain hit the window like an old metronome, keeping time with my thoughts. I stared at the message for a few long seconds, then set my phone face down on the coffee table. I didn't reply, not then, not the next day, not at all. And that silence, the one I used to fill with apologies, favors, or last-minute rescues, grew louder by the hour. I think that's when things really started to unravel. It began quietly. Missed calls, group chat silence, a couple of passive-aggressive posts on Facebook from one of Bree's bridesmaids about loyalty and family drama ruining weddings. I didn't engage. Neither did most of the family. But then I started getting messages, real ones, from people I hadn't heard from in months, sometimes years, cousins, aunts, even old friends of Bree's. One cousin, Jules, messaged me late one night. Just wanted to say you weren't wrong. I remember when Bree uninvited me from her birthday dinner because my dress was the wrong shade of mauve. I thought I was being petty for still remembering, but now I get it. Another sent me a picture from Bree's wedding. A candid someone else had taken, blurry and unflattering. It showed me standing near the restroom hallway, holding my coat in one hand, the envelope in the other, alone, forgotten, background noise. This one hit different after I heard the full story. The message read, She didn't even tell us you were there. By the time a week had passed, Bree had gone radio silent. No more social media posts, no updated honeymoon photos, just a single, now deleted Instagram story that had featured a filtered beach pic with the caption, Some people are determined to be the villain in your happiness. It backfired. The comments weren't what she'd hoped for. You mean your brother who paid for half your wedding and sat by the bathroom? Villains don't usually give $3,000 checks. Just saying. So, is your aesthetic just excluding people who don't fit your brand? I didn't write any of those comments. I didn't have to. People were connecting the dots on their own. Then came the real blow. Jasmine texted me on a Monday afternoon. Callum moved out. He's staying with me. I sat there stunned. I hadn't spoken to Callum since our coffee meeting. Hadn't expected anything more than quiet regret on his part. But apparently quiet regret had evolved into a full-blown confrontation. He found out Bree lied about more than just you. She opened a second credit card in his name to cover the extra touches for the wedding. Said she'd take care of it later. He only found out when the bill arrived. He says he doesn't even recognize her anymore. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just someone who had been excluded. I was someone whose absence had become a catalyst. A crack in the porcelain facade Bree had spent her whole adult life perfecting. And now the pieces were beginning to fall. Took another 3 weeks for my mother to reach out again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a knock at the door. I almost didn't answer, but something told me it was time to let this play out. I opened the door, and there she was, makeup immaculate, but her eyes tired. She looked at me like someone bracing for a storm. "Kale," she said softly. I stepped aside, let her in. She sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, holding her purse like it was a lifeline. "I came to talk," she said. "Really talk. Not deflect, not defend." I sat across from her, silent. She took a breath. "I didn't see it. I really didn't. I thought we were protecting Bree, that she needed more. That you were fine." That made me laugh, bitter and low. Because I didn't complain. She looked down. "Yes, I wasn't fine," I said. "But it was easier for everyone if I acted like I was. So I did." She nodded slowly, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "I didn't mean to make you feel small." "But you did," I said, over and over. "And not just you, Bree, Dad, the whole family. I was useful, quiet, disposable." There was a long silence. She didn't deny it, didn't argue. That was new. "Your father and I," she started, then stopped. "We got so used to Bree's intensity, her expectations, her flare-ups. It was easier to manage her than to challenge her. You were easier to overlook." I blinked. That wasn't an apology, but it was close. She looked up at me. "Kale, what can I do now?" I thought about it for a long moment. "You can stop asking me to fix everything," I said. "You can start telling the truth to yourself, to others. You can stop pretending Bree is the victim here." My mother sat quietly, then nodded. "I can do that." She left not long after. No hug, no parting lemon bars, just a quiet, measured goodbye. I didn't expect much to change after that, but it did. A few days later, a family group chat popped up on my phone, one that Bree wasn't in. It was started by Leo, of all people, who'd previously kept his head down during all the drama. The first message surprised me. "We need to do better." Starting with Kale. "I'm sorry, bro." Messages followed from others. Apologies, memories, even offers to get together. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an accessory to someone else's story. And Bree, she stayed quiet. Rumors swirled. Callum had officially filed for an annulment. Her influencer friends stopped tagging her in photos. She locked her Instagram. Even my mother, when I last saw her, said Bree hadn't returned her calls in over a week. I don't know what Bree's next move will be. And honestly, I don't care. I spent so long thinking that family meant shrinking yourself to make room for others. That love was endurance. That silence was peace. Not anymore. I didn't become bitter. I became free. And if that makes me the villain in someone else's fairy tale, so be it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now on to the next story. Story 7. "I only used your card for a small payment," my mom said. I believed her. But by morning, my balance was zero. $2,000 gone. Dad chuckled. "Consider it a donation to the family." I didn't argue. I just did one silent thing. At 8 a.m., Mom opened her email and loudly screamed. My mom has always been good at one thing: making herself the victim no matter what. You could catch her doing something blatantly wrong and she'd still twist it into a story about how she was just trying her best, and everyone else was being unfair. I grew up watching her pull that routine on relatives, neighbors, even her own friends. For a while, I thought that was normal. Now I know better. She's the type who can borrow $20 with a guilty smile and then act offended if you ask for it back. The type who claims she's struggling but somehow always finds money for the newest gadget or some fancy skincare trending online. So, when she called me on a Wednesday night asking if she could use my debit card, I should have hung up. Instead, I listened. She said she needed it for dinner. Just dinner. Her card was acting up. She didn't want to bother anyone else, and she promised it would be a single small charge. She kept repeating that she'd transfer the money back first thing in the morning. She even made a comment about how I never help her anymore. like she was testing how much guilt I still carried around. I live in my own apartment now, far away from all that chaos. But the moment I heard her voice shifting into that familiar guilt-soaked tone, I felt myself slipping back into old habits. So I gave her the card number. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself she wouldn't dare mess things up again after everything that happened last year with the credit mess she pretended not to understand. That lie I told myself was the only reason I slept peacefully that night. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I saw was a notification from my bank. I opened the app expecting to see the usual balance. Fat zero. $2,000 gone in a single night. For a second, I honestly thought it was fraud. That was the hopeful explanation. But then I looked at the transactions. Luxury candles I'd never heard of, a gold chain from a random boutique, several prepaid Visa cards, a weird set of kitchen knives that cost more than my entire grocery budget for the month. My stomach dropped. Called her. She didn't answer. Called again. Voicemail. On the third attempt, she finally picked up and sounded like I was bothering her. I asked what happened to my money. She said she thought my card had more on it. She said she needed a few extra things and figured it wouldn't matter since I had savings. She acted like it was some minor inconvenience. Then, as if she hadn't already stolen from me, she added that she couldn't return anything because she had already opened most of it or thrown away packaging. Before I could even respond, I heard my dad in the background. He said, "Consider it a donation to the family." A donation as if I owed them my life savings. I didn't argue. I didn't explain how the missing $2,000 meant I wouldn't make rent. I didn't give her the satisfaction of hearing my voice break. I hung up. Then I did something I'd been considering for months, but never actually acted on. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. The screenshots, the transactions, the messages from past situations. All of it. I wrote a single line at the bottom. It happened again. Proceed. He didn't waste time. The next morning, right at 8 a.m., my mom opened her email. I know the exact time because I was sitting at my desk when my phone started lighting up from relatives trying to reach me. Her scream came through loud enough that my aunt, who lives next door to her, texted me asking what I had done. She had just opened a formal notice from my lawyer, and she had absolutely no idea this was only the beginning. At 8:03 a.m., the first call came in. I was already expecting it. I watched the screen light up with Mom and let it ring. She called again, then again. I silenced the phone. By 8:20, she'd left 2 voicemails and sent 4 texts. The first one was almost laughably casual. "Hey, can you give me a quick call when you're free?" Like she hadn't just emptied my bank account and woken up to a formal notice from a law firm with her name on it. The second message was more urgent. "Olivia, what did you do? You need to call me right now." I didn't. By 9 a.m., the tone had shifted. I was suddenly the heartless daughter, the backstabber, the one destroying the family over a little misunderstanding. She sent voice messages, too. I didn't listen to them, but I could see the previews. "Why would you do this to your own mother? You're blowing this out of proportion. You always do this. I didn't mean for it to go that far." That last one told me everything I needed to know. She knew exactly what she'd done. He always did. By 10 a.m., she had enlisted help. My aunt called. Then my cousin Sarah, whom I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. One by one, people who never reached out suddenly cared deeply about resolving this peacefully. Nobody asked me what happened. Not a single person said, "What did she do?" They just assumed I was overreacting like always, that I'd gone too far, that I should have handled it within the family. But here's what they didn't know. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't even the 5th. There was the time she took out a phone contract in my name when I was 20. The utility bills in my name that she ignored for months. The emergency vet bill I paid for her dog. The dog she later gave away without telling anyone. The credit card she maxed out pretending it was a joint account. And every single time she cried. Every single time she said she was sorry. She was struggling. She just needed help. Every single time I forgave her until this one. At 11:15, she called me from a number I didn't recognize. A landline. I let it ring, then blocked it. By noon, the count was 15 missed calls. 8 texts, 5 voicemails, and a single message from my dad that simply said, "You've made your choice." I didn't even flinch. This time I had receipts, dozens of screenshots, texts, emails, bank statements. I'd been collecting them for over a year. I never thought I'd use them. I thought the threat alone would be enough someday, but it never was. This time I sent everything to my lawyer. He didn't hesitate. He said the amount met the threshold for felony financial exploitation. And because of the history, the bank was already cooperating. There were laws for this. 2:30, he called me back. The sheriff's department had been contacted. They were opening an investigation. I'd need to submit a formal affidavit, and from there, the case would move to the district attorney's office. He asked me if I was sure I wanted to move forward. I told him I wasn't sure about anything anymore, except one thing. I wasn't going to let her do this to me again. At 4 o'clock, she sent one last message. "If this goes public, you're going to regret it. We all are." I screenshotted it and sent it to my lawyer. He added it to the file. The next morning at 9:12 a.m., my mom got a call from the sheriff's office requesting a formal interview about a financial complaint. She didn't scream this time. She didn't cry. She didn't call me again. Instead, she went quiet, which was the most terrifying sign of all because it meant she finally understood. I wasn't bluffing. The silence lasted exactly 2 days. No calls, no texts, not even one of her dramatic voicemails. I knew better than to think it meant anything. When my mom's quiet, it's not surrender. It's staging. And right on cue, the next morning, I opened Facebook to find a post that was clearly written for me, but not addressed to me. There's nothing more painful than watching someone you raise turn their back on you over money. I sacrificed everything for my children. But some people have short memories and cold hearts. Dozens of likes, hearts, crying face emojis, the usual enablers piling in. You deserve better. Some kids are so ungrateful. You did your best, hun. And then the private messages started. One cousin said, "What's going on with your mom? She's devastated." Another sent a voice note that began with, "I'm not taking sides, but that's the thing about family drama. Most people don't care what actually happened. They care about how uncomfortable it makes them." But none of them knew how deep this really went. They didn't see the receipts, the years of financial abuse, the way she twisted every situation into a guilt trap. They hadn't watched her drain my accounts, lie through her teeth, then cry when she got caught. And this time, the law was involved. The same day, the sheriff's office confirmed they'd scheduled an interview with her. It was official. The complaint had teeth now. My lawyer told me the state was taking it seriously, especially with the documentation I'd provided. That's when she tried to flip the script again. On Friday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. No words, just an image. A screenshot showing a $2,000 transfer into my account. Then a second text. "There, it's taken care of. Let's not let this get ugly." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I shouldn't have done that." Just, "Let's not let this get ugly." She thought the money would erase everything. As if the charges, the statements, the fraud report, all of it, could just vanish if the balance looked right again. I sent the screenshot to my lawyer. He responded within minutes. "They're scrambling. This won't stop anything." By then, the bank had already flagged the transaction history. The sheriff's department had already collected enough to move forward. And what she didn't know, or maybe forgot, was that this case wasn't just about this one time. It was about every time. Every lie, every misuse, every manipulation, the prepaid cards, the fake emergencies, the forgotten bills she opened in my name. And now, thanks to her own panic, she had unintentionally confirmed her guilt in writing. Later that evening, I got a message from my cousin Laura. "They're spiraling. Your mom's saying she'll expose everything about you if this hits court. Your dad's been pacing all day." It was almost funny. They still thought this was about protecting secrets, like I had something to lose by telling the truth. On Monday morning, a certified letter arrived. The court summons. My mother charged with financial exploitation, identity fraud, and unauthorized use of a banking instrument. My father, named as a co-defendant for enabling and encouraging the act. Hearing date scheduled, 6 weeks out. I stood there holding the envelope for a long time. Not because I was scared, not even because I was angry anymore. It was because I finally realized something. I hadn't said a word to them in over a week, and still everything was moving forward. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to defend the decision. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. 2 weeks before the hearing, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Not my lawyer, not the sheriff's department. It was a woman from the district attorney's office. Her tone wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't casual either. She said there was something new, something important, something I needed to see in person. That sentence alone was enough to rattle me. I asked if it was about the case I filed. She said, "It's related, but it's not just about your case anymore." That was the only explanation I got. She asked if I could come into their downtown office the next morning. I agreed, even though my hands were shaking as I hung up. I barely slept that night. I was used to unpredictability from my parents, but this felt different, bigger. The next morning, I met her in a windowless office on the 4th floor of the county courthouse. She had a thick folder already open in front of her, with color-coded tabs sticking out and copies of paperwork fanned across her desk. She started simple, asked how long my parents had access to my personal information, if I'd ever lived with them as an adult, if I ever gave them access to my mail. Then she slid a set of documents toward me. Loan applications, credit card applications, a lease for a used car in another city. All in my name. I'd never seen any of them before. My stomach dropped. 5 documents, different lenders, different dates. 3 had been approved. The amounts weren't massive. $3,000 here, $5,000 there. But they were enough to cause real damage. And all of them were tied directly to my name, my social, my information. Forged signatures, fake emails, a mailing address that wasn't mine. I looked up. I couldn't even form a sentence. She said quietly, "You're not the only one. 2 other victims came forward last week. Both say your mother used their information with promises to pay off the debt herself. Neither ever gave her permission." One of the names made me go cold. It was my cousin Ava. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year after a falling out that never made sense to me. She just stopped answering my texts one day. I thought it was personal. Now I knew why. The other was a former family friend who cut ties 5 years ago. I remembered her vaguely. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was a pattern, a trail. The DA laid it out. They'd quietly started building a broader case after receiving 2 separate complaints that mentioned my mom, both describing similar tactics: emotional manipulation, urgent borrowing, unauthorized use of identity. My report had triggered something. Once they saw the financials I submitted, it all lined up. She said this was no longer a single fraud complaint. The case was being elevated to a multi-victim financial crime investigation. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, possibly even organized financial exploitation, depending on how deep it went. They had already subpoenaed the banks and lenders involved. My parents had no idea what was coming. And then she said something that made everything twist in my gut. "There's a suspicion that your father acted as the facilitator, not just in your case, but in the others. According to the others who came forward, he was often the one who vouched for the legitimacy of the information. In some cases, he made the call to the lender pretending to be the applicant. Suddenly, his little joke, 'Consider it a donation to the family,' wasn't so funny. It was part of a larger lie." I left the office that day with a copy of the official expansion notice. The case had a new title now: State versus Diane and Thomas Weller, my parents. And I was listed not just as a victim, but as the original complainant who helped uncover everything. By the end of that week, the court date was moved up. Too many moving pieces, too many other people involved. It was no longer just about stolen money. It was about trust shattered in multiple directions. Damage that reached beyond me. And the most surreal part? None of them had any idea what they were about to walk into. They thought they were coming to court to answer for $2,000. They had no idea the floor beneath them was already cracking. The courtroom didn't look like justice. It looked like a quiet office with bad lighting and too much air conditioning. But that didn't matter. I wasn't there for appearances. I was there for closure. I walked in alone. My lawyer met me just outside the doors and gave me a look. Steady, professional. But I could see it in his eyes. He knew this wasn't just a legal matter for me. This was personal in every cell of my body. My parents were already seated. My mother in a beige sweater that I recognized. One I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago. My father sat stone still, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept. Neither of them looked at me. There were more people than I expected, not just officials and court staff. My cousin Ava was there. So was the former family friend. Her name was Carla, and both of them looked like they were trying to keep from shaking. The prosecutor wasted no time. They started with the timeline, then the transactions, then the testimony. Ava went first. She told the court how my mom used her name to apply for a department store card, then maxed it out buying Christmas gifts. She was 17. It destroyed her credit before she ever had a chance. Carla spoke next. Her voice cracked halfway through. My mom had taken out a personal loan using her info, $8,000. When Carla confronted her, my mom blamed her for being too trusting and told her not to make things harder than they had to be. Then they brought out my records, the forged applications, the screenshots, the bank statements. I felt like I was watching someone else's life. When I finally spoke, I wasn't angry. I was tired. I told the court everything. Not just about the $2,000 they drained overnight, but the years before that, the fake utility bills in my name. The time I found out my mom had signed me up for a rewards card at a jewelry store and used it to finance a gold bracelet for herself. I told them about the phone contract she took out under my name, how I found out only after being denied for a real one. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just told the truth. When the judge delivered the verdict, my parents still hadn't looked at me. Guilty. My mom's mouth dropped slightly open. My father's eyes finally lifted, but they didn't meet mine. They were ordered to pay full restitution, not just to me, but to Ava and Carla. Their finances would be audited. They'd be placed under supervised probation and officially recorded for multiple counts of identity fraud, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. No jail time. That part stung, but the rest, the consequences, the exposure, the permanent stain on their records, it was enough. After court, Ava hugged me tightly. Carla nodded at me and said, "You did something I couldn't." I walked out into the sun, not feeling proud, just relieved, like I could finally breathe without watching my bank account every morning. I thought that was the worst of it, but I was wrong. 3 nights later, my phone buzzed with messages. My cousin Eric texted, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were going to do that." I asked what happened. He told me there was a family dinner, one I obviously wasn't invited to. It was supposed to be casual, a reset. But somewhere near the end, in front of a table full of relatives, my dad stood up, lifted his glass, and said, "Olivia is no longer our daughter." Just like that. My mom didn't say anything. She just nodded. Some people clapped. Others were too stunned to react. Eric said, "My grandma walked out. So did Laura." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't shock. It wasn't sadness. It was a weird mix of clarity and numbness. They were never going to see what they did as wrong. To them, I was the traitor, the one who embarrassed them, the one who brought outsiders into family business. But I wasn't alone. Ava called me that night, said she wanted to rebuild. Carla emailed me to say she was donating her restitution money to a legal fund for other fraud victims. Aunt Laura left me a voicemail. Just one sentence. "You did the right thing." Even if they never admit it. I wasn't thrilled. I didn't feel victorious because no matter how toxic they were still my parents, and now they were strangers by their own choice. It's strange how quickly people vanish from your life once the truth comes out. Not you, them. I didn't expect what happened after the trial. I thought things would go quiet. I thought my parents would retreat, lick their wounds, maybe even convince themselves they'd been wronged. But what I didn't expect was how fast everyone else would start pulling away from them. The first thing I noticed was the group chat. We had one for family birthdays and gatherings. It had been dead silent since the verdict. Then one night, my cousin Eric sent a message. Can we start a new thread without Diane and Tom? Feels weird now. No one disagreed. Someone made a new one. They weren't invited. Then came the unfollows. Quiet, passive, but deliberate. I checked my mom's Facebook profile out of curiosity. I don't know why, and saw her friends list had started thinning out. Aunts, cousins, even a few of her lifelong friends gone. She posted once, something vague. It's amazing how people pretend to care about family until you need them most. A few people liked it. No one commented, from what I heard, because people kept feeding me pieces whether I wanted them or not. They tried to show up to a baby shower in early September. My cousin Ava was there. So was my Aunt Laura. They both left within minutes of my parents walking in. My dad tried to speak to Laura before she left. She didn't even look at him. Just said, "You got what you deserved," and walked out. They stopped being invited to things after that. Slowly but surely, their names stopped showing up in RSVP lists. And it wasn't just the fraud. It was everything underneath it. The manipulation, the years of guilt tripping, the quiet taking from people they thought would never call them out. I wasn't the only one. I was just the first to finally say enough. The restitution came in pieces. The court gave them a schedule, and every few weeks a few hundred would hit my account. Cold. Impersonal deposits labeled court-ordered payback. No apology, not a single word from either of them. But then one afternoon, I got a card in the mail. No name, no return address, just an envelope with familiar handwriting. Inside was a single photo. Me at age 10 sitting on my mom's lap, smiling at something off camera. Her arm was around me, and I looked happy in that dumb, innocent way kids do before they learn the truth about people. There was no note, nothing written on the back, just the image, as if that alone was supposed to mean something. I threw it away because I realized then that's all they had left. Old pictures, ghosts of who I used to be. They don't know me now. They never tried to. They only saw me as useful, manageable, someone they could fold into whatever crisis they created next. And when I stopped playing the role, I became the enemy. I heard they've started blaming each other. My aunt told me they had a screaming match at a family dinner. My dad said it was all my mom's idea. She was the one who used my information, who filled out the documents. My mom fired back that he encouraged it, laughed about it, and never once tried to stop her. For once, they weren't unified in denial. Their relationships cracking under the weight of everything they did together. They're alone now, together but isolated. No family, no more excuses, and no one left to manipulate. Me, I'm not celebrating. I'm just living. My credit is finally clean. I got approved for a new place. A better job opened up for me because I no longer had to explain weird background issues. I'm building something from scratch on my own, and no one else is taking a piece of it. I still get questions from people who don't know the full story. Do you talk to your parents? Have they apologized? Do you think they miss you? The answers are no, no, and maybe. But it doesn't matter because I don't miss them. Not really. I miss the idea of what parents are supposed to be. But that idea never existed for me. Now no one talks to them anymore. Not because I asked them to take sides, but because people saw the truth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I've finally learned that peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from knowing you survived what they swore you'd never speak about. And you spoke anyway. Now on to the next story. Story 8. For the third year in a row, no one remembered my birthday. But then I saw my sister's post. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for the new apartment. I just blocked them all. 2 days later, my dad was at my door, begging to talk. This year, I didn't even wait for midnight. I already knew they wouldn't call. I knew because they hadn't last year or the year before. But still, I stared at my phone until 12:01, pretending it might light up. Didn't. I turned 30 with the kind of silence that feels personal. The worst part was, I'd actually reminded them this time, casually. Nothing dramatic. Just a little message in the family group chat 3 days earlier. Said I might do something small at home if anyone was around. No one responded. No happy early birthday. Not even the usual thumbs up. Just silence. Seen by Mom. Seen by Madison. At first, I told myself they were just busy. People get like that. Life happens. I had no reason to make it a big deal. But still, when my son woke me up bouncing on the bed shouting for waffles, I kept my phone nearby, just in case. Just in case anyone remembered. They didn't. My husband did, though. He made breakfast. Waffles, strawberries, a candle, and mine. He kissed my cheek and said, "Happy birthday." Like he meant it. That should have been enough. But it wasn't. Not because I needed a party. Not even because I expected a gift. I just thought, after everything, that they'd at least say something. I sat on the couch that afternoon with my coffee going cold in my hands, trying not to check my phone again. I told myself it didn't matter, but then I opened Instagram and saw it. Madison, standing in an empty living room with new flooring and floor-to-ceiling windows, grinning like she just won the lottery. The caption, "Thanks, Mom and Dad, for helping me get this place. Couldn't have done it without you." 2 hearts. I read it 3 times. This was the sister who'd called me last month in tears because she was about to be evicted. I had sent her money. She never paid me back. Never even said thank you, really. But somehow, just days later, she was posing in a brand new downtown apartment. Way too nice for someone with no job and no savings. And our parents? They helped her move in. Meanwhile, they hadn't even sent me a damn emoji. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. Not at first. It just felt like something inside me finally caved in. I went through my contacts one by one. Mom, Dad, Madison, and hit block on all 3. No message, no explanation, just done. It was weird how quiet it felt afterward. I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. I felt like I could finally breathe. But of course, it didn't last. 2 days later, while I was still deciding whether or not to even mention any of it to my husband, the doorbell rang. It was 9:06 in the morning. I was still in my robe, half asleep, holding my toddler on my hip when I opened the door. It was my dad. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. He had a paper bag in one hand and that weird nervous look he always gets when he knows he's messed up. He said he needed to talk. Said it was important. Said he didn't understand why I blocked them. I didn't answer. I just moved out of the way and let him in. He sat down like nothing had happened. Like I'd invited him over for coffee and not like he'd shown up after ghosting my 30th birthday and helping my sister into a new apartment. He placed the paper bag on the table and started talking about Madison, about how the move had been exhausting, how downtown parking was a nightmare, how she still didn't have a couch. I leaned against the counter, not saying a word, just watching him, waiting to see when he'd get to the part that involved me. He didn't, not for a while. He talked like he'd come for a casual catch-up. He even laughed at one point, said something about how Madison still couldn't figure out how to use her buzzer system. Like I was supposed to care. Like I hadn't spent the last 2 days wondering how I could mean so little to people I kept choosing over myself. Eventually, he got to it. He said he'd noticed something was wrong when he tried to text me, tried to send me a message about a situation they were dealing with, a surprise medical bill that came out of nowhere. He said he was going to ask me for help, like he always did, but the message didn't go through. That's when he realized he was blocked. That was the first honest thing he said all morning. I asked if he even knew what day my birthday was. He said, "Of course I did. The 12th. That was wrong. It's the 11th. He corrected himself quickly, blamed it on the stress, said he and my mom had talked about calling me. They'd even gotten me something, he said. That's when he slid the paper bag closer to me. Inside was a card, one of those $2 ones from the grocery store with a balloon on the front. No envelope, just the card with my name in the corner in my mom's handwriting. Inside, "Happy belated birthday. Love you always." And a $50 Target gift card. I stared at it for a while. I think he expected me to be touched. Like this cheap afterthought could undo everything they hadn't done. Like this was enough to erase years of being the backup daughter. He said they didn't mean to make me feel left out. That Madison just needed more help lately. That I was doing well and had a husband and a kid and stability. He actually used that word, stability, like it was a reason to treat me like I didn't matter. I asked him if he knew how many times I'd helped cover their bills in the last 2 years. He looked confused. I told him I'd paid their internet, their power, their gas bill. I reminded him that when Madison's roommate bailed, I was the one who Venmo'd her half the rent. Not just once, but 4 times. No one had ever paid me back. No one had even said thank you. He didn't argue. He just sat there. Then he said he was sorry. He told me Mom felt awful. That Madison missed me. That they all wanted to sit down, talk it out, clear the air. He suggested we meet for lunch that weekend. Somewhere neutral, casual, just to talk. Reconnect. I hesitated. I wish I could say I stood my ground. That I told him no, that I closed the door and walked away. But I didn't. I said, okay. I don't even know why. Maybe part of me still hoped they'd finally hear me. That they'd show up and act like a real family for once. Or maybe I just felt guilty, tired, weak. He left with a smile like everything was back on track. Like the problem had been solved. But deep down, I knew better. I just didn't know how bad it was going to get. Not yet. The restaurant was small, tucked on a side street in the nicer part of downtown. And I knew before I even walked in that it was Madison's choice. She'd posted about it on Instagram just a week earlier. Some perfectly staged shot of her wine glass against a plate of pasta. I hadn't eaten there in years, not since before all this started. When we arrived, they were already at the table. My mom smiled and waved like nothing had happened, like she hadn't forgotten my birthday for the 3rd time in a row. Madison gave me a quick, tight smile, the kind you give a cashier, not your sister. My dad stood up, pulled my chair out for me like we were playing some happy family role. My husband came with me. I told him he didn't have to, but he insisted. He sat close, his hand resting on the back of my chair. He didn't say much at first, just watched. He'd been warning me for months, saying I was letting them use me. I never wanted to believe him. The first 20 minutes of lunch felt like small talk at a stranger's wedding. They asked about our son, about my husband's work, about how the house was coming along. No one mentioned my birthday. No one mentioned the fact that I'd blocked them. They just kept smiling like everything was fine. Then Madison started talking about her new apartment, how beautiful it was, how the parking garage had security, how she was thinking about getting a puppy now that she had space. She thanked Mom and Dad again right there at the table for making it possible. I felt my husband stiffen beside me. Mom shifted the conversation to how things have been tough lately. Dad chimed in about bills piling up, unexpected costs, insurance problems, the kind of vague talk I'd heard before. I didn't even have to look at my husband to know he knew what was coming. They needed money. First, it was just hints, comments about how it's been one thing after another, and we've been so stressed. Then, Dad said they hated to ask, but if they couldn't make a payment soon, they were going to lose the car. Mom nodded, looking at me like she was rehearsing for a sad commercial. Then Madison jumped in like she was part of the chorus. She said she wished she could help, but her bills were already too high. She said, I'm already stretched, while sitting there with a brand new designer bag next to her chair. And then she looked at me, that look at everything. This was my cue. This was where I always stepped in, where I sighed, asked how much, and saved the day. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. He didn't say a word, but I could feel the warning in his grip. This was the moment I was supposed to stop, but I didn't. I asked how much. It wasn't a small number. A few thousand, enough to make my stomach knot up. I hesitated, but then I heard my mom say, we don't know who else to turn to. And Dad said, you've always been so good to us. And like a fool, I nodded. I said I'd transfer it later that night. My mom looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted. Dad thanked me. Madison didn't say a word. She just went back to her pasta, scrolling her phone between bites. On the drive home, no one said anything. My husband kept his hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. When we got inside the house, he shut the door behind us and finally spoke. He asked me why I kept doing it. Why I kept draining our savings for people who didn't even send a text on my birthday. Why I was taking money from our son's future just to keep them afloat. I didn't have an answer. I just said I wanted peace. That I wanted them to care about me even if I had to buy it. He said the thing I didn't want to hear. They don't care, Kelly. They never did. and you're pretending they do. That night, while my son was asleep and my husband sat in the living room staring at the TV without watching it, I sent the money anyway. I told myself this would be the last time, but deep down I already knew it wouldn't be. 3 weeks passed. Nothing. Not a text, not a call, not even a lazy emoji in the group chat. I kept checking my phone. Even though I told myself I was done waiting, I wasn't. Every morning, I looked at my bank account and saw that missing $3,000 like a bruise that wouldn't fade. It wasn't just about the money. It was what the silence meant. They'd taken it and disappeared. At first, I thought maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they felt guilty and didn't know how to face me. But that theory didn't hold up for long because on a random Thursday afternoon, I found out exactly where that money went. I was on Facebook, half scrolling while my son napped on the couch next to me, when a video caught my eye. It was one of Madison's friends, one of those people who lives online and overshares every second of their day. The video was loud and chaotic. Music blaring, people dancing, someone yelling, "Cheers to Madison!" before the screen panned to a living room lit with fairy lights and filled with people. Madison stood in the center, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by gifts, balloons, and what looked like a brand new leather sectional. Caption read, "Maddie's housewarming bash was fire, fire, fire. So proud of her. New job, new place, new life. You're glowing girl. 2 hearts, briefcase, bottle with popping cork. New job." I clicked through the friends' photos and found it all. Madison had started working for a boutique marketing agency full-time with benefits nearly a month ago. There was even a post from her own page showing off a designer tote bag with the caption, "First big girl bonus." Bonus from the job she got before that lunch, before she looked me in the face and told me she was stretched, before she let me believe she couldn't help with mom and dad's car payment. She hadn't just lied. She had let me pay her share. My stomach flipped. I called my husband into the room and handed him my phone without saying a word. He looked through the posts, photo after photo of Madison celebrating with our money. I watched the muscle in his jaw twitch before he finally handed my phone back and walked out. He didn't say a single word. I sat there, my phone still in my hand, trying to make sense of it. At some point, I opened Venmo and found the old transaction. I stared at the date, 2 days before her job announcement. She'd already signed the offer. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself, maybe mom and dad didn't know. Maybe Madison didn't tell them. Maybe I was just overthinking again. So I did something stupid. Called her. No answer. I left a voicemail, controlled. I asked her to call me back. I said I saw the posts and just wanted to understand. I asked why she didn't say anything at lunch. Why she let me pay again. Why no one told me. She never called me back. The next night I got a text. Not from Madison, from my mom. Just one line. "We didn't want to cause more tension between you and your sister." That was it. Not sorry, not an explanation. Just, we didn't want to make things worse. Like lying to me, using me, and letting me hand over money we needed for our kid was somehow protecting me. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I showed it to my husband. He read it quiet, then said, "You need to block them again. All of them. This time for good." I didn't answer. Couldn't. I felt stupid. Like everything he warned me about was crashing down at once. I'd defended them for years, ignored the favoritism, the gaslighting, the way I was only ever needed, not loved. And now here I was, broke, exhausted, and the punchline to their family joke. But I wasn't done being humiliated. The next morning, our bank called. My husband answered. They said someone had tried to use his debit card to pay a bill online. A Comcast account in my dad's name, the same one we'd helped them with last year. Apparently, my dad had kept the card number, never deleted it, just saved it for later. My husband didn't yell, didn't throw things. He just got up, made a few calls, canceled the card, and locked down the accounts. Then he came into the kitchen, leaned on the counter and said, "You're not giving them another $1. I'll deal with this now." I asked him what he meant. He said, "I'm getting our money back." I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't. I didn't ask my husband what he was going to do. I think part of me didn't want to know because I already felt humiliated enough. I dragged him into a mess I should have seen coming a mile away, and now he was the one fixing it. He left the house without much explanation, just kissed our son on the head, grabbed his keys, and said he'd be back soon. I watched him drive away from the window and had this tight feeling in my chest like something was about to break. I wasn't wrong. About 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. I thought for a second it might be him calling from a landline or something. Maybe the situation had gone bad. Maybe he needed me to pick him up. So I answered without thinking. It was Madison. She didn't even give me a chance to speak. Just launched into it like she'd been waiting for the moment. She said I had completely embarrassed myself. That sending my husband to handle things was pathetic. She called him controlling. Said he had no business showing up at our parents' place acting like a cop. She said I was weak for letting him fight my battles, that if I had something to say, I should have been woman enough to say it myself. Then she got uglier. She said she was sick of me acting like a martyr, that I always played the victim, that just because I had a kid and a mortgage didn't make me better than anyone else, that our parents helped her because she deserved it, and maybe I needed to get over myself. I didn't say anything, not a word. I just held the phone, frozen, while she kept going. She said they were all sick of walking on eggshells around me, that I made everything about me, that I was always keeping score and making people feel bad for helping her. Then she laughed and said, maybe if I hadn't been so boring, I'd be the one getting help instead of always handing it out. She ended with this, you'll always be the bitter one, Kelly, the one who keeps receipts. The one who can't stand that I'm loved more than you. And you know what? You'll never be happy because losers like you always need someone else to blame. And then she hung up. I don't even remember setting the phone down. I sat on the floor in the hallway, leaned against the wall, and just stayed there. My head was buzzing. My heart felt like it had been scooped out and left somewhere cold. It was like every suspicion I'd ever had, every quiet fear I'd ignored. She said it out loud. They all knew what they were doing. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't favoritism I imagined. It was deliberate, and worse, they thought it was justified. I didn't even cry right away. I just sat in this thick, ugly silence and let her words bounce around in my skull. About 30 minutes later, the front door opened. My husband came in and found me sitting there. I looked up at him, still holding my phone, and the first thing I asked was, "Did you yell?" He shook his head, said no. Said he didn't need to. He told me he went to my parents' house and knocked on the door. That my dad opened it, confused, but let him in. My mom was there too. Madison wasn't. He told them what happened. The $3,000, the debit card, the housewarming party, the job. And then he told them we were done. He said if they didn't give the money back today, we'd press charges. Bank fraud, digital records. He said it calmly but clearly, like someone who was ready to follow through. They didn't even argue. My dad went to the kitchen and came back with an envelope. Said they didn't want trouble. My mom cried, tried to talk, but he told her not to. Just give him the money and let him leave. He handed me the envelope. Inside was the full amount, all in cash. $3,000 in 20s and 50s. I held it for a minute, then asked him, "Now what?" He looked at me and said, "Now you decide if you ever want them back in your life, but I'm done. And I think you should be too." That night, I sat in bed while my son slept beside me and thought about everything. Madison's voice kept echoing in my head. But this time, it didn't hurt the same. It just sounded hollow because finally, I wasn't confused anymore. They didn't love me less. They didn't forget me by accident. They just didn't think I mattered enough to treat differently. And that broke something in me I'd been trying to keep whole for years. But it also set me free. I knew what I had to do. One last thing, I didn't block them right away. I wanted to. Every part of me was screaming to shut the door, to finally be done. To pull the plug on years of being the emotional backup generator to people who only noticed when their lives short-circuited. But I waited 3 days. Not because I was confused or hoping they'd apologize or even expecting a call. I waited because I wanted to be sure that when I ended it, it would be for good. Not another line in the sand I'd eventually erase the minute one of them called crying. This time had to mean something. I spent those 3 days quietly. I didn't talk much. I didn't reach out to friends. I watched. I watched my son line up his toy cars on the floor with the kind of concentration I used to reserve for trying to please people who never thanked me. I watched my husband, the man I thought I was dragging through my family drama, cook dinner and clean dishes like it was just another Tuesday. He didn't say much either, but I could tell he was waiting, letting me sit with it, letting me realize for myself what he already knew. By the third night, I was standing in the bathroom brushing my teeth, staring at myself in the mirror when it hit me. I hadn't cried. Not once. Not after Madison's call. Not after the money came back. Not after deleting their texts. Nothing. Because I wasn't sad. I was done. The kind of done that feels calm, heavy, but solid. Like the kind of silence that finally means peace. So I opened my phone. First my dad. Block, delete. Then my mom. Block, delete. And finally Madison. I paused. Not because I was conflicted, but because I realized this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about the girl I used to be. The one who used to bend over backwards to make her smile, to cover her messes, to believe that one day she'd finally be proud of me. I let her go, too. Block, delete. And it felt clean. I went to bed that night with nothing in my chest except relief. But of course, it didn't end there. 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one line. "You're really going to let him come between us?" No name, no punctuation, no courage. I didn't need to ask who it was from. I didn't reply. I just stared at it for a second, then deleted it like the junk it was. Because here's the thing, there was never an us. Not really. There was me, constantly trying to be part of something that had already chosen who mattered. There was them, taking and taking until I didn't even recognize my own birthday anymore. And then there was my husband, the only person who actually stood up for me instead of standing on me. The money was back in our account. But more than that, something inside me had shifted. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped feeling guilty for saying no. I stopped measuring love by how much I was willing to give without asking for anything back. And I finally understood what people meant when they say peace isn't free. You have to cut the rope to get it. I don't know if they'll try again. Maybe next year when something goes wrong. Maybe when Madison needs help again and they all pretend the past never happened. But I won't be there. I'll be somewhere else entirely. In a life I built with people who show up because they want, not because they need something. And if anyone ever asks what happened with my family, I'll just say this. I stopped calling it love when it only hurt one person. And that person was always me. No, now I choose different. And this time I don't go back. It's been a week since everything. Since the money came back, since I blocked them, since I deleted the text that probably came from Madison but might have been my mom. It's all a blur now. But something kept nagging at me. Not guilt. I was past that. It was more like this quiet pressure in my chest that wouldn't let go. Like something still needed to be said. Not typed. And not in defense, not in anger. So, I made the decision no one would have expected, least of all me. I went over there. I didn't call ahead. I didn't give them time to prepare. I just drove over in the late afternoon, parked in the driveway I hadn't stood in since last Christmas, and knocked on the door. My dad answered. His face dropped for half a second like he wasn't sure if he should hug me or brace for impact. I walked in without saying much. My mom was in the kitchen. She looked surprised too, but not in a bad way, just cautious. We sat at the dining table, same place where they once opened Madison's college acceptance letter like she'd won the Nobel Prize. Same table where I told them I was pregnant and they asked if it was on purpose. No one touched the iced tea in front of them. I told them everything. I told them I knew about Madison's job before they asked for money. I told them I knew about the party. I told them I knew about the debit card charge. I told them about the way she spoke to me, the things she said. But more than all that, I told them the truth. I didn't respect them anymore. That I had spent years trying to win a game I didn't even know I was losing. That I was tired of always being the one who showed up when they needed something only to be forgotten when it was my turn. And then I said the part one didn't plan on. I told them I was hurt, yes, but more than that, I was exhausted. I told them how hard it's been being the dependable one, the strong one, the one who doesn't fall apart, even when she's barely holding it together. I didn't cry. Neither did they. But something shifted in the room. Something real. My dad leaned forward. Said he never realized how deep it went. Said he thought I was just stronger than Madison, that I didn't need the same kind of attention. My mom didn't speak for a long time. Then she said quietly that maybe she didn't know how to show love in a way I could feel. And for the first time in what felt like years, we really talked. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And it was overdue. I left after about 2 hours. No yelling, no tears. Just 3 people who finally stopped pretending. I don't know what happens next. I'm not saying everything suddenly healed, but I do know this. That conversation was the first time I walked away from them feeling lighter, not heavier. Something needed to be broken open. Maybe this was it. I haven't told my husband yet. I don't know how to. Not because I'm hiding it, but because I'm not sure how he'll take it. He went to war for me, got our money back, protected me when I wouldn't, and now I've gone back and reopened the door. Part of me feels guilty about that, but a bigger part of me feels calm. For the first time in a long time, I feel like maybe I'm not stuck in the same story anymore. Maybe this time we're writing a new one. Now on to the next story. Story 9. On Thanksgiving, family kicked me out because I gave them only $4,000 a month. But they wanted more. My wife opened my eyes, and I went to do something that made them cry. Thanksgiving at my parents' house always followed a predictable pattern. The smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air. Laughter echoed through the rooms, and my parents, along with my 2 younger brothers, Jason, 18, and Matt, 20, made sure to catch me up on everything going on in their lives. Well, mostly what they spent money on that month. For the past 3 years, I'd given them $4,000 each month. It wasn't something they asked for at first. I offered to help because I was doing well financially and wanted to make their lives easier. It was a relief for them at first. My dad was able to cut back on his work hours, my mom quit her part-time job, and my brothers didn't have to take out loans for college. It felt good to help them. But over time, something changed. Instead of gratitude, there was this expectation, as if my monthly remittances were just part of the family routine. They'd casually talk about the new gadgets they'd bought or the weekend trips they'd taken, all the while hinting that $4,000 didn't go as far as it used to. This Thanksgiving was no different, at least not at first. We all sat around the table, Megan next to me, her baby bump just beginning to show under her sweater. She'd been quiet most of the evening, which I figured was just because she was tired. She was 6 months pregnant, and though she never said anything directly, I knew she wasn't thrilled about how much money I was sending home to my family. So we were thinking, my dad began, smiling as he spooned mashed potatoes onto his plate. With inflation and everything, maybe you could help us out a little more starting next month? Just $1,000 or $2,000 more would make such a difference, right guys? Jason and Matt nodded immediately, grinning like they'd just gotten an early Christmas present. Oh yeah, Matt said. I've been looking at this new gaming PC, top-of-the-line specs. I could really use it for school stuff. He didn't even try to sound convincing. Jason chimed in, and I've been thinking about getting a car, something reliable, you know. It would help with my classes. He didn't mention that he dropped out of his first semester a month ago and was exploring his options. All 3 of them looked at me with such confidence, as if they already knew my answer. My dad even chuckled and added, "You've always been so generous. We're lucky to have you, son." I glanced at Megan, who gave me a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. That was all I needed to steel myself for what I was about to say. "I can't do that," I said, my voice steady. "Actually, I have to cut back. Things are tight right now with the baby on the way, and I can't keep giving you $4,000 a month. Starting next month, I'll have to cut it to $2,000. The room fell silent. My father's smile disappeared, replaced by a furrowed brow. My mother's fork clattered on her plate. Jason and Matt exchanged wide-eyed glances before Jason broke the silence. "Wait, what? You're cutting it in half." He looked genuinely offended. "I'm sorry," I said. "Megan and I need to think about our future. It's not that I don't want to help, but $4,000 is a lot, and we just can't afford it anymore." My mother let out a dramatic sigh. You know your father and I work so hard to keep this house going. And your brothers, they're so young. How can you expect them to focus on their future when they're worried about money? They're 18 and 20, I said. They can get part-time jobs or something. I'm not saying they have to support themselves completely, but they should contribute. Matt crossed his arms. You don't get it. It's hard to find the motivation to do anything right now. Jobs suck and school is a drag. Why should I bother when I can't even see a clear path forward? And what about me? Jason added. You think I want to flip burgers or bag groceries? That's not who I am. My father pointed his fork at me. You've always been the responsible one, the one we could count on. And now you're just cutting us off? What are we supposed to do? Work harder. The accusation stung more than I had expected. I spent years helping them, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And now it felt like none of it mattered. They weren't just ungrateful, they were entitled. When my dad told me to leave, I didn't argue. Megan and I packed up and left without touching dessert. That night, as I sat on our couch with my head in my hands, I couldn't stop replaying their words. All I'd ever wanted was to be a good son, a good brother, but instead, I'd created a monster. The drive home was quiet. Megan didn't say much, but I could tell she was holding back. She was always the one who kept me grounded, the voice of reason when I got caught up in the demands of my family. That night, though, she waited until we got home. As soon as we walked through the door, I sank into the couch, completely exhausted. Megan stood in front of me, her arms crossed over her growing belly. Are you okay? She finally asked. No, I admitted. I feel like I let them down, like I've been helping all this time, and the one time I say I can't give anymore, they just kick me out. It's like none of it matters. She sat down beside me and put a hand on my knee. Look, I've kept quiet about this for a long time because I didn't want to make things harder for you. But tonight, I can't keep quiet anymore. What they did was wrong. The way they treated you was wrong. They're my family, I said, though the words felt hollow even as they came out. I thought helping them was the right thing to do. It was, she said, but they don't see it that way anymore. To them, it's not help, it's a paycheck. And now they're angry because you're putting our family first. You, me, and our baby. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd always justified the money by telling myself I was keeping my family afloat. But Megan was right. They weren't just leaning on me, they were using me. And I let it happen because I didn't want to feel like a bad son or brother. They kicked me out, Megan, I said, my voice cracking. On Thanksgiving. She nodded, her eyes softening. I know, and you didn't deserve it. You were more than generous, and they took advantage of you. But this is the wake-up call you needed. You have to think of us now, about our baby. Do you really want to keep pouring money into a situation where you're not appreciated? The answer was obvious, but saying it out loud felt like admitting defeat. No, I finally said. I don't. Then it's time to stop, she said. Not just cut back, stop completely. They'll figure it out, and if they don't, it's not your responsibility anymore. I didn't respond, but I couldn't shake the image of my parents' faces when I told them I was cutting back. How angry they were, how betrayed they acted. It was like they didn't even see me as a person anymore, just a bank account. I barely slept that night. I kept going over every conversation I'd had with them over the past few years, realizing how many red flags I'd ignored. The way my father always brought up money like it was a casual topic. The way my brothers never thanked me but always had something new they needed. The way my mother would guilt me for even hinting that I was stretched too thin. By morning, I'd made up my mind. Megan was right. It was time to quit. Not just for me, but for her and for our child. I wasn't going to let my family's demands ruin my future with them. The next step would be the hardest. Telling my parents and brothers that they were on their own. On Sunday afternoon, I called my parents and told them I wanted to come over and talk to them. They sounded a little surprised, but they agreed. Megan wanted to come with me, but I told her to stay home. This was something I needed to do alone. When I arrived at their house, everything looked normal. Jason's car was parked randomly in the driveway, and through the living room window, I could see Matt sitting on the couch with his gaming headset on, probably yelling at some kid on the other side of the world. For a moment, I wondered if I was making too big a deal out of this. Maybe they'd understand if I explained things calmly. Maybe they'd even apologize for the way they acted on Thanksgiving. That hope lasted about 30 seconds. As soon as I walked in, my mom started talking as if nothing had happened. "Oh, good, you're here. We were just checking out the Black Friday deals. There's this patio set that your dad and I have been eyeing. So nice. And the boys found some things they'd like for Christmas." She handed me a piece of paper with links printed on it, as if I were Santa Claus and not her son. I didn't sit down. "Mom, I'm not here to talk about Christmas lists. I'm here because we need to have a serious talk." That got her attention. My dad muted the football game and Matt took off his headset. Jason came in from the kitchen, still chewing on something. They all sat down and looked at me expectantly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began. "And after what happened on Thanksgiving, I realized that I need to make some changes. I've been helping you for years, and I don't regret it. But Megan and I have a baby on the way, and we need to focus on our family now. So, as of right now, I'm going to stop sending you money." The silence was deafening. My dad's face turned red, and my mom's jaw literally dropped. Jason and Matt just stared at me as if I told them I was canceling Christmas. "What do you mean, stop sending money?" my dad finally asked. "You can't just cut us off like that." "That's exactly what I'm doing," I said. "It's not sustainable. You've had years to adjust, but instead you've gotten used to it. It's not my job to finance your lifestyle." Matt was the first to explode. "Are you serious? So what, we're just supposed to fend for ourselves? I don't even have a job right now." "Then get one," I said. "You're 20 years old, Matt. Lots of people your age work while they go to school." Jason jumped in. "This is so messed up, man. We've been struggling, and you know it. How can you just leave us like this?" I snapped. "Struggling? You're not struggling. You sit around playing video games and complaining about motivation while I bust my ass to support you. You know what's struggling? Trying to save for a baby while your family is bleeding you dry. That's struggling." My mom started to cry. "How can you talk to us like that? We're your family." "I know you're my family," I said. "That's why I helped you in the first place. But you took advantage of me, and I can't do it anymore. I won't." Then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. "You think we don't know about Megan?" my dad said suddenly, his voice deep and cold. "What are you talking about?" I asked, confused. "We've been talking," he continued. "Your wife has been whispering in your ear, hasn't she? Filling your head with ideas about cutting us off." I froze. "That's ridiculous. This is my decision." "Is it?" my mother asked, her voice shaking. "Because it sounds like she's pulling the strings around here. Ever since she came into the picture, you've been different. You used to care about this family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're seriously blaming Megan? She's not the problem. You are. She's the one who opened my eyes to how toxic this had become. And you know what? She's right." Jason rolled his eyes. "Wow, you really let her brainwash you, huh? Whatever happened to family first? Or does that only apply when it's convenient?" "Enough," I said. "You don't get to make me feel guilty about putting my wife and child first. This isn't about Megan. This is about you refusing to take responsibility for your own life." My mother began to sob harder, and my father stood up and pointed a finger at me. "If you leave here today and cut us off, don't bother coming back. You'll regret it." I looked him right in the eye. "The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner." With that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving them in stunned silence. I barely made it to my car before my phone started buzzing. It was my mom. I ignored the call. Then another from Jason. Then a flood of texts. They ranged from angry to guilt-tripping to downright manipulative. "Mom, we've always been there for you, and this is how you repay us." Jason, "Don't worry. I'll just go live in my car since I guess I don't matter anymore." Dad, "Don't think for a second you can just waltz back into this family after what you did." When I got home, I felt like I was suffocating. Megan was waiting for me on the couch and looked up as I walked in. She must have seen the tension on my face because she didn't say anything right away. She just opened her arms, and for the first time in years, I let myself fall apart. After I told her everything, she remained silent for a moment before asking, "Do you think they'll actually cut you off?" I laughed bitterly. "They won't cut me off, they can't afford to. They'll just keep trying to make me feel guilty until I give in." But that's not what happened next. The next morning, I woke up to find my social media inundated with posts from my brothers and even my parents. Jason had posted a picture of an empty refrigerator with the caption, "Guess family ain't what it used to be. Thanks for leaving us, bro." Matt had posted some vague story about how some people think money is more important than family. And my mom had written a long, dramatic post about how I'd broken her heart by choosing my wife over her. It was humiliating. Friends and even some distant relatives started messaging me to ask what was going on. Some people even sided with my family, saying things like, "You can't just leave your parents, they raised you," or, "It's just money, you'll make more." Megan was furious. "This is way beyond unacceptable," she said. "They're trying to destroy your reputation because they can't control you anymore." She was right, but I didn't know how to fight back. Every time I tried to explain my side, I felt like I was being painted as the villain. It was exhausting. Then, something unexpected happened. That night, I got a call from my Aunt Linda. She's my mom's older sister, and she's always been the black sheep of the family. Divorced, outspoken, and not afraid to call people out. I hadn't talked to her in years, so I was surprised to see her name on my phone. "Hey, Linda," I said carefully. "What's up?" "I saw the circus your family's putting on," she said bluntly. "I just wanted to tell you I think you're doing the right thing." I blinked. "You do?" "Absolutely. Your parents have been like this for as long as I can remember. They use guilt to control people and it's toxic as hell. I had to cut them off years ago because they used the same crap on me." I'd heard whispers that she and my parents had fallen out, but I'd never asked for details. Hearing her say it now felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. "Look," she continued, "they're going to push every button they can to get you back in line. But if you give in, it'll never stop. Trust me, you're better off without them." Her words stayed with me. I didn't want to believe that my own family was toxic, but deep down, I knew she was right. It was as if Megan and Linda had held up a mirror, forcing me to see what I'd been blind to for years. Still, the public spectacle was hard to ignore. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, another twist came out of nowhere. A few days after my Aunt Linda's phone call, I got another text from my mom. This one wasn't angry or manipulative. It was desperate. "I just came back from the doctor. My blood pressure is dangerously high. The stress of all this has made me sick. I hope you're happy now. We may not even be able to afford my medicine. Please, can we just talk for a second?" I felt the old guilt creeping, but then I remembered Linda's words. "They'll push every button they can to get you back in line." I took a deep breath and knew what I had to do. I called my mom back. She answered on the first ring, her voice immediately soft and weak, as if trying to sound as pitiful as possible. "Hi, honey," she said. "Thank you for calling. I've been so worried. I know you're upset, but we can't handle this alone. Your dad and I are getting older and the boys." I cut her off. "Mom, stop. I've already made my decision. I'm not sending you any more money. It's not my responsibility to solve everyone's problems. You, Dad, and the boys are all able to work. It's time for you to take care of yourselves." There was a long silence, and then she began to cry. "You don't understand what you're doing to this family. You're tearing us apart. My health is failing, and now I have to worry about money on top of everything else. How could you do this to me?" I felt a pang of guilt, but I forced myself to push through. "I'm not doing anything to you. You did this to yourself by refusing to take responsibility. I've been helping for years, and all it's done is make you dependent. I'm not going to keep enabling that." Her tone immediately changed from tears to anger. "Fine. If you want to leave your family, go ahead. But don't come crying to us when things fall apart for you." "I won't," I said firmly. "Goodbye, Mom." And just like that, I hung up. It hurt more than I thought, even though I knew it was the right thing to do. The finality of that conversation hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd spent so much of my life trying to be the perfect son, and now it was clear that I could never live up to their impossible expectations. For the next few months, I stuck with my decision. Jason and Matt sent me angry texts from time to time, blaming me for everything from their car problems to their lack of motivation. My dad emailed me once, saying he hoped I was happy breaking up the family. I didn't respond to any of it. Eventually, the messages stopped. I think they realized I wasn't going to back down. Megan and I focused on preparing for our daughter's arrival, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. When our daughter Ella was born, everything changed. When I held her for the first time, I felt the kind of love I'd never felt before. Suddenly, all the stress and guilt of my family seemed so small and insignificant. Megan and I could finally focus on building a happy, healthy life for our little family. A few weeks after Ella's birth, I received a phone call from my Aunt Linda. "I just heard the good news," she said. "Congratulations. How does it feel to be a dad?" "It's incredible," I said. "I can't even put it into words." "Well," she said, her voice warm, "just remember, you've got your own family now. You're doing the right thing, even if it's hard." She was right. Cutting my parents and brothers out of my life was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. But it was also one of the best. They were forced to figure things out for themselves, and I was finally free from the weight of their expectations. Now, every time I look at Ella, I know I made the right choice. She deserves a dad who will put her first. A dad who won't let anyone or anything get in the way of her happiness. And that's who I'm going to be. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.